Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to episode 10 of Gish Gallop Girl. I'm your regular host, Thomas Anderson, and with me today is, of course...
Matthew Anderson, your secondary host, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, we are actually going to get through all of Chapter 2 of Blackout today, and then we're going to move on to some really disturbing shit that happened on the new Candace show. Yeah, I'm not sure which one I'm looking forward to or not. So let's just get this started then. All right. So Candace starts chapter 2, which has a notes section in the back, but again, no bibliography in this book. Anyway, Candace does make a valid point at the top of the chapter. She mentions that at the time close to publication of this book, CNN had less than 1 million viewers a day, and even today that holds true. MSNBC and Fox News have more viewers on average separately than CNN does. She uses this to say that legacy media is dying off because at the time of this book being written, Candace had 2.5 million subs on Twitter. At the time of me writing this, she has over 5 million subs on Twitter, which calls back to why I'm doing this show and also why I was surprised no one else seemed to be doing this before. In spite of her being a public liar and being easily disproved, Candace has a growing audience, and her audience has grown in spite of her bullshit takes, and it in fact seems fueled by them as the media grows her audience for her in the same way they did for Alex Jones and InfoWars. It might be unintentional, but legacy media has learned nothing over the many years that it has been doing this, because all they do is use sound bites and pull people like Candace in for interviews to clown on them. But it never goes that way because these types know the cameras aren't going to cut off when they start getting irate when they get pushback or are asked to answer for their stupid takes. Instead, they grow their audience by going full-on counterattack, attracting the people that appreciate that kind of reaction, and then those people talk to other smooth brains who begin to tune in. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I know about that smooth-brainedness.
Yeah. Smooth brains like koalas.
Yep.
Which is still insulting to koalas.
I unfortunately convinced a right-wing coworker. I unfortunately inspired a right-wing coworker that maybe they should bring back the gladiatorial games, and that's how we should elect a president.
Oh, jeez.
Because he was throwing a hissy fit about the debate, and I was just like, maybe we should just have gladiatorial games.
Well, what kills me about that is that, like, even the Democrats were like, Biden lost the debate. Okay, I mean, whatever. Yeah. Biden has never been good at debating. Robert Evans, Behind the Bastards, and It Could Happen Here, pointed out that historically, Biden has never been great on stage.
No.
He's better at a desk, reading shit and signing it and talking to the right people. He's not a good stage presence. Trump is the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Biden did at one point call him a, and they mentioned this as well, Biden did at one point call him a, he used a really good one. It wasn't rat fucker, but I want it to be rat fucker.
Fucker.
Yeah, no, it wasn't that. It was, he said that he had the morals of an alley cat. And yeah, I was like, okay. All right. But so anyway, speaking of tuning in, Candace claims that when she began to turn from a liberal thinker to a conservative, she decided to start by looking at conservative voices on YouTube and came across a video of the Rubin Report. Now, for those unfamiliar, the host of this show was Dave Rubin, a failed stand-up comic that wrote an essay and video titled Why I Left the Left, a work that explained why he wanted to be a conservative. It hit all the talking points of the day. He attacked safe spaces, trigger warnings, and the opposition of speakers on campuses. It resonated with the intended audience. Rubin has done well for himself with his new friends. Anyway, he interviewed Larry Elder, who we spoke about in the first couple episodes of this show, and according to Candace, that interview helped push her over the edge into her current state. Elder was asked about police violence being a marker of racism, and Elder quoted a bunch of numbers, which Candace has provided verbatim from the transcript. I won't repeat the stats because a lot of time has passed since then, and the publicly known deaths of George Floyd here in Minneapolis, and Breonna Taylor, and many others since, have put to rest a lot of the numbers dancing that people like Larry Elder specialize in. I went through the numbers on the statement, and they don't add up to what both Larry Elder and Candace Owens and others would have their usually white audience believe. Elder did on Rubin what he did at the start of this book, and that is pull a lie, in this case several, by omission. For those who haven't listened to the first 2 episodes of this show, for one thing, I get it. It's not like this is a required course in school or anything. For some who only listen on Spotify, I know there was and may still be an issue getting the first episode on there. By the time this airs, I will have linked to it on the website and may make it a hard link if I can do so. It's only about a 60 megabyte download, or I can set it as a streaming link. Anyway, back to the issue at hand. Candace decided to become a conservative because she watched Larry Elder deliver a verbal beatdown to a man she now calls a dear friend. But this was more like becoming a fan of a fighter that won a rigged match. Elder likes to use cherry-picked stats to try to prove often that police violence on black folks is not a problem. Candace does the same thing. They also like to use stats to prove in some form that institutional racism and systemic racism don't exist and haven't for a long time. Never mind the actual lived experience of many black folks I have known for many years. These people haven't always been criminals or wanted or anything, but they have grown up in fear just the same. Fear of stepping out of line, of doing one thing on a bad day that fucks up the rest of their lives because it gets blown out of proportion. For Larry Elder and Candace Owens, they were both raised in supportive homes. They talk often about how the decline of black fatherhood has been the source of problems in the black community. But that, like with Thomas Sowell, who was mentioned in the last episode, they are quick to point out with data how all of this adds up to problems like crime and poverty. But they have no solutions because they refuse to see how the society they support keeps people down. Because facing the truth of real solutions, that actually takes work. It requires looking at the whole of the system beyond just blaming rap stars for glorifying their lives. It requires not blaming popular culture and examining the systems that screw people over en masse. Because that's where the real truth and the real data lie. And they, to their audience, would seem to do that when they blame the welfare state. They both blame government benefit programs for taking the place of fathers in the home. But anyone that has gone through the hoops of getting said benefits and then maintaining them knows that it can be a kind of hell. In order to get proper medical care, especially for chronic issues, patients often have to develop themselves into their own attorneys, taking careful stock of every little thing. Same with their housing and, unfortunately, their incomes. One reason why people who are on income assistance don't improve their lives is because they can't afford the middle ground. What I mean is, if they get a pay raise of just enough money, they can be taken off the programs that are supporting them. Not a lessening of their benefits, a total loss. So many of the people that I've known on assistance programs have refused pay raises and have stayed in bad situations for years, while they do work under the table being paid straight cash so they can claw out of bad situations. Maybe. If nothing goes wrong and they don't exhaust themselves from overwork or stress, if they can live without major issues happening, the way life is, that's a big if. But that's no excuse to not go after these people in what they call work. In fact, it's one of the reasons we do this. It can be daunting, but let's continue our dive into this fucking cesspool. I looked into Larry Elder's life just a bit, and he came from good parents in a good middle-class area. Much like Candace. Putting her parents' divorce aside, she was raised with loving relatives in a good area as well. So they have a lot of similarities. Which is probably why they're such good friends, at least as far as I can tell. Moving on from Larry Elder and his hand-picked stats, Candace goes on to make several incredibly wrong statements about former President Lyndon B. Johnson. Now, before I get into this, Johnson wasn't perfect by any means. His best friends probably called him an asshole. But rather than tell true stories about the man, Candace instead starts her section on LBJ with an overheard accusation. According to the story Candace tells, and I quote, again, with some editing and obvious spots on my part, quote, "The Democrat Party has a long history of racism, but few can claim as much credit for damaging the black community as the late President Lyndon B. Johnson. Robert Caro's definitive biography of LBJ, Master of the Senate, talks about his common use of the N-word, not in singular use, but frequently and repeatedly. While in Congress, Johnson was an extremely conscientious member of the Southern Bloc, the Democrat-controlled voting group that was notoriously committed to blocking the progression of civil rights. In fact, during Johnson's first 20 years in the U.S. Senate, he voted down every single civil rights measure that made the floor." End quote. Now, looking into these claims meant that I had to look into the life of LBJ. While it was recorded by his biographer and many other people that knew him that he was racist in private, his public actions were anything but racist. Candace is wrong in her assertion that he voted against civil rights measures. Absurdly wrong. She goes on in this book, across a couple of pages, making the common conservative assertion that the passing of the Great Society initiatives made welfare recipients married to an ever-increasing government presence in their lives. Candace quotes from the Heritage Foundation, which anyone who listens to this universe of podcasts probably just hissed and spat at the mention of. But anyway, she quotes someone from the Heritage Foundation who said, quote, "What if I took that kind of welfare policy and implemented it in your family?" wrote Kay Coles James, president of the Heritage Foundation. "If I said to your sons, 'Sweetie, you don't have to work, I'll take care of everything,' and if I said to your daughters, 'Sugar, you go ahead and have as many babies as you want, I'll give you more money to take care of them,' what do you think your family would be like in 20 years? I'll tell you, your sons would be living at home and not working, your daughters would be having kids out of wedlock, and your family would be a whole lot poorer." End quote. Candace also says an actual fact, bless her, that the federal budget has $1 trillion carved out for welfare programs. What she fails to mention is that the majority of that is not just handing people money. It's a combination of SNAP, which used to be known as food stamps, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, Medicaid, Social Security, and Medicare, housing assistance. Now, all of those programs are things that, ta-da, the Republicans want to remove from pretty much every budget. They've been working to do that for decades. The Heritage Foundation especially has expressed interest in removing every supplemental program from the budget, and despite what anyone will tell you, that has always included Social Security. They don't want to pay into it and actively want to shut it down and or increase the age the recipients have to be to get it. They want to increase it by another 5 years.
So instead of being 62, you got to be 60.
Well, instead of being 65, basically, you got to be 70.
Oh.
Some of them are talking about raising it to 75.
Yeah.
And they've been doing that for a long time. They're only really getting into it now because the Republicans have pushed out this thing they call it's not Agenda 25. It's something like Plan 2025 or something like, I can't remember right now because my brain is filled with this fucking mush. But yeah, they want to, in stated goals, actively remove just tons of federal programs. And Justice Clarence Thomas, it came out today that he wants to look into removing OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration.
Yeah.
He wants them gone.
Ooh. So there's no longer any regulations on buildings?
He doesn't want anything like OSHA around. Yeah.
What does he want to build that he doesn't want OSHA present for?
Who knows? This is a guy who used to clip his pubes and put them on Coke cans at his colleagues' desks.
What the fuck?
Yeah. Oh, he thought it was hilarious when he did it too. Yeah. Yeah. The Behind the Bastard series on him is epic. Yeah.
I'm sorry, just...
Yeah. He did that frequently. He's known for it. He may have continued to do it. We don't know. Once they become a Supreme Court member, their lives are basically locked away.
Mm-hmm.
Although we do know that he vacations a lot on a billionaire's yacht. That billionaire's name is Harlan Crow.
I've heard the name before, but...
Yeah, he's some big shot financial asshole. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can bet maybe he's whispering Clarence Thomas's ear.
Mm-hmm.
Who the fuck knows? Anyway, Candace goes on to say, quote, "It surprises me that the issue of welfare reform has been drawn across party lines when politicians on both sides of the aisle have justifiably critiqued the modern social safety net and its tendency to keep blacks tight within its perimeters. Ronald Reagan was roundly lambasted for his depiction of the welfare queen, a woman who was said to have used, quote, 80 names, 30 addresses, 15 telephone numbers to collect food stamps, Social Security, veterans benefits for 4 non-existent deceased veteran husbands, and a woman whose tax-free cash income alone has been running $150,000 a year, and who, for better or worse, was said to represent the vast majority of urban, read black, women on welfare. Despite criticism, Reagan was telling the truth. Welfarism breaks down undue havoc upon any given society by enabling irresponsible behavior from both men and women. Those who wish to dismiss that truth as the racist rantings of a now-deceased, staunchly conservative Republican president would do well to remember that its sentiments were also echoed by former President Barack Obama, our liberal first black president. End quote.
That was... You might have to go back through that one slower.
No, I refuse. I fucking refuse. We're going to move on. Before we go on with that, let's discuss the welfare queen myth. Here are some key points about this myth. The origin and Reagan's role. 1. The term welfare queen was coined in 1974 by the Chicago Tribune to describe Linda Taylor, a woman accused of welfare fraud. Ronald Reagan popularized the concept 2 years later during his 1976 presidential campaign, frequently referencing a woman in Chicago who allegedly committed extensive welfare fraud. 2. The real Linda Taylor. Linda Taylor was a real person who did commit welfare fraud, but her crimes were far less extensive than Reagan claimed. She was convicted of stealing about $8,000 in welfare funds, which is far less than the $150,000 Reagan cited. So, she stole about $8,000. Reagan claimed $150,000. Mm-hmm. Who is right? Probably the fucking justice system that convicted her.
Yeah.
Taylor was a complex figure with a troubled background and was suspected of more serious crimes, including kidnapping and possibly murder.
Fun.
The welfare queen stereotype was racially charged, typically depicting a black single mother living lavishly on government benefits. Reagan never explicitly mentioned race, but the implication was clear to his predominantly white audience. The myth fueled support for welfare reform and cuts to social programs. It contributed to negative stereotypes about welfare recipients, particularly poor black women. The narrative influenced policy changes under both Republican and Democratic administrations, including Bill Clinton's 1996 welfare reforms. Now, that being mentioned, I had an aunt who worked in the welfare office in Georgia.
Yeah.
You met her.
All right.
She worked in the welfare office in Georgia for many years. That was basically her career when she got out of college.
Okay.
Was to be a social worker at, I think it was the office in Atlanta. Anyway, she was there for a long time, several decades. And when that happened in 1996, when welfare reforms went in 1996, I asked her about that. I was like, you know, that's supposed to like make things easier. And she goes, oh, no. No, we have to fill out so much more paperwork now. I have so much less time for the people I'm supposed to be serving. Mm-hmm. She's like, I'm on salary. So that means that if I care about my job and my clients, and I do, I now am working, I was pulling, you know, a 50-hour week. Now it's closer to 75.
Jesus.
Because the goal was to make it harder.
Mm-hmm.
Make it harder for these people, even with simpler questions.
Yeah.
To collect anything. And, you know, she's like, I care a lot, but damn it, it sucks.
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah. And there were factual inaccuracies, of course. There was no evidence of widespread welfare fraud as suggested by the myth. White Americans have consistently been the largest group of welfare recipients, and the stereotype continues to influence public perception and policy debates around welfare and poverty. It has contributed to ongoing stigmatization of welfare recipients and resistance to expanding social safety net programs. In summary, the Reagan welfare queen myth was based on a real case of fraud, but was greatly exaggerated and used to promote harmful stereotypes. So, while I have personally known people that abused the system in various ways, no one is living rich and many live in fear of getting caught. When they have been caught, the payback has been minimal and usually within their means to cover, as the fraud, if it can be called that, was done between states of living, as in going from assistance to not needing it. And by that I mean like people that that literally, like I mentioned earlier, they're making cash under the table. They're working like a part-time job somewhere, and they've got like an agreement, like, yeah, I'll come in and wash the dishes for $50 a night or whatever.
Yeah.
Then they build that on the side to the point that they can afford to tell their caseworker, if they have one, if they're lucky enough and they have one, they can tell their caseworker, like, yeah, I don't need this anymore.
Yeah.
I'm going to get a raise in my job and it's going to knock it out. Now, if they get caught, like let's say they have a spouse that rats them out after they break up or whatever.
Yeah.
If they get caught, the payback is usually like, oh, well, you were on benefits for like 6 months or whatever that you didn't need.
Yeah.
Because you already had this other sideline. Well, payback, whatever. It's usually not very harsh.
Yeah.
So Candace then goes on to cherry pick a speech Senator Obama made at a Father's Day gathering in 2008, just a few months before he would be elected president. Candace cherry picks the parts that echo Reagan and, of course, leaves out the rest of the speech. It is several minutes long, but it's actually very good, and in it, Obama said many things about how even single men that kept their child support payments current should be supported in getting things like job training, and how important it was to promote education to kids as they grow up, and how single mothers definitely needed support regardless of the reason why they were single moms. I won't go through the speech here, but I'll link to it in the show notes. Politico has the transcript. Candace goes on to jump all over the place in her next set of assertions. She quotes from a paper written in 1965 by Daniel Patrick Moynihan for the Office of Family Planning and Research, wherein he claims that at current rates of birth, the black families in America would outpace white births and 1 of 8 Americans would be non-white. She then goes on to say, quote, efforts to control the black population have been in place since at least the 1920s, when fear began spreading around the nation that the preferred, more intelligent white race was becoming threatened by immigration. Popular eugenicists made the argument that it was necessary to make efforts to stop those who were deemed undesirable from reproducing. Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, who is today hailed as a hero for giving women greater control over when they bear children, was one such eugenicist. Sanger upheld the popular belief of her day that America needed to hinder those with unfavorable traits from reproducing. From 1939 to 1942, Sanger led the Negro Project, an initiative that was purported to combat poverty among Southern blacks by providing family planning education and access to birth control and contraceptives. Intentional as she was, Sanger pushed to partner with black ministers who she knew would be instrumental in gaining the trust of the people she was looking to help and might thereby conceal her true motives. Sanger wrote to Dr. Clarence Gamble, another leader of the Negro Project, quote, the minister's work is also important, and also he should be trained, perhaps by the Birth Control Federation of America, as to our ideals and the goal that we hope to reach. While Sanger's appeal to the black community may have been about choice, the fact remains that she openly authored articles in support of, quote, applying a stern and rigid policy of sterilization, end quote, in an effort to ensure the country against future burdens of maintenance for numerous offspring who may be born of feeble-minded parents. So ingratiated were her ideas with the racism of her time that she addressed Ku Klux Klan members to garner her further support for her birth control measures. End quote. And again, we have the Klan invoked. Sanger was an early fan of eugenics. That's a known fact, and she did, along with other people, start what would become Planned Parenthood. It went through like 3 or 4 fucking name changes. I didn't bother to write them all down because it doesn't matter. It's Planned Parenthood today.
Yeah.
Sanger's views would change over time, as would many people that lived to see the end result of eugenic thought being the horrors committed by the Nazis.
Yeah.
But in the time between, Sanger did try to work with black doctors and clinics to start black-centered women's health clinics. The effort was to provide health care and knowledge of birth control measures. Abortion was made illegal in America in the 1910s, so the clinics couldn't legally provide that service, but they could help women with health care and information, even with simple measures like how to use condoms. Because condoms have almost always been around.
Yeah.
You know. Or, God forbid, condom with the pull-out method. You know? I mean, However, Sanger's vision for the clinics being black-owned and black-centered was marred by a lack of funding, and she had to cede the availability of those clinics to the people that were willing to staff them. Candace goes on to properly criticize a heinous practice that occurred in hospitals mostly, known as Mississippi appendectomies. A summary I found said, the term Mississippi appendectomy refers to the practice of involuntary sterilization, particularly of black women under the guise of medical procedures such as appendectomies or hysterectomies. This practice was prevalent in the southern U.S., especially in Mississippi, from the 1920s to the 1980s.
Jesus.
Historical context and practice of this. The term was coined by civil rights activist Fannie Lou Hamer, who herself was a victim of this practice. In 1961, Hamer underwent surgery to remove a uterine tumor, but was instead given a hysterectomy without her knowledge or consent. This was a common experience for many black women in Mississippi and other southern states, where medical professionals performed unnecessary hysterectomies on poor black women, often without their informed consent, as a form of birth control and eugenics. So yes, this is terrible, and it has rightfully contributed to people in the black community not entirely entrusting doctors and other medical professionals. And then we get into the real actual meat of the argument presented here near the end of this chapter. Candace quotes a piece from the publication The Washington Examiner, which is another conservative shit rag.
Okay.
Anyway, the writer said that with current black birth rates, the black population in America would be almost insignificant in voting power. So Candace then goes on to the actual meaning of this buildup, and she says, it's no wonder Democrats have suddenly come out in support of mass illegal immigration, as a new victim class to carry their party will be needed in the near future. And there we have it. Replacement theory, but used for black citizens. Candace finishes the chapter by saying, is it not a wonder that the same party that claims that racism is at the core of black American ills routinely promotes the policies and ideologies that victimize black families the most? The same people who scream about black incarceration rates, economic disparities, and impoverished neighborhoods never lend their voices in attacks against the welfare system, which inspires all three. Similarly, is it not a wonder that the same people behind the Black Lives Matter campaign, the ones who claim to care about the unjust slaughter of blacks in the streets, refuse to acknowledge that today the most unsafe place for a black child is in its mother's womb? Indeed, perhaps the reason Democrats don't attack these industries is that they are the authors, perpetrators, and main benefactors of their Machiavellian designs. Of course, the pushback here can be found in a few simple facts. For one, of all the abortions done over the years after Roe v. Wade, only 40% were from black citizens. Granted, that's a huge number. And also, Candace's statements about welfare as a catch-all term is supposed to call to mind images of lazy people sitting around, maybe watching TV and collecting a check for nothing. The truth is, as I stated already, people like Candace and the people she quotes want to remove or cut spending on programs that are already not enough to help people really leave the system. When they call to cut spending on welfare, they are calling to cut Medicaid, Medicare, Obamacare, Social Security, food assistance and housing programs, as well as things such as unemployment and income and housing assistance, school lunches and breakfast, and of course education and education assistance. One look at the 2025 project, that's the name of it, put up by the GOP tells this truth. But yes, going back to what I said, this entire chapter seems to be for the person that bought this book and already agrees with Candace, tacitly, that all government programs are bad not only for taking away from taxpayers and giving it to people, but also for making people dependent on those same programs. And then making the link between less births being the case for increased immigration, she sells the idea that it all has to go. That's chapter fucking 2.
Jesus. Okay, it really confuses me on the, I mean, where's the... Alright.
Lay it out. Go ahead.
So, welfare benefits, what have yous, all are already not funded enough.
Yeah.
But they want to cut the funding on them.
Yeah.
And where's that funding gonna go?
Oh, to the military, probably.
That's kind of what I figured, but...
Or it's going to just... They're going to go, oh, well, we don't have the funding for that. And as they shut down programs and stuff,
yeah,
as they pay people their last paychecks that work diligently on these things, as they cut the final checks, because a lot of that money is already earmarked.
Yeah.
It just won't come from the people that it should be coming from, which is the ultra fucking rich.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a form of getting to the tax cuts that the wealthy donors of these sick fucks have been pushing at for years.
Okay.
Because they desperately need another fucking percentage point.
Right. Okay. So then...
It would come in the form of lower taxes, which, they would try to do the trickle-down economics thing, which doesn't work.
No.
It just doesn't. No.
But, okay. So, following that up...
Uh-huh. Yeah. Go for it.
It makes no sense.
How's that?
Because then they're going to complain about, the homeless and impoverished people.
Oh, no. See, here's the thing. Right? The people that can't get benefits, like, we have several churches in our area that give out free meals.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Well, I'm sure part of that funding for those free meals comes from their congregants.
Yeah.
Or, donors, even. But I'm sure part of it also comes from, like, local taxes.
Yeah.
Whatever office would dole out that version of money for those things. So, that's the thing, is that these people never really say it, but I always read it as being like a genocide on the poor through starvation.
Okay.
Because if they're not, and that's how they make like a class war happen.
Yeah.
Is by starving people out. The people that don't want to do violence and shit will die first.
Yeah.
And what they don't really realize is that the people that are left will become radicalized by watching people they cared about die horribly.
Yeah.
That's the slippery slope of, and I don't like the slippery slope argument used in any kind of context, but that's the slope that they think they'll be insulated from, because we've had several instances where, like, normal people could have stood up and made a difference and chose not to. They chose to sit at home and just go, oh, well, I'll vote.
Yeah.
Well, they've done that long enough that the people in power seem to think, okay, well, if we get rid of the poors by just not feeding them anymore, these are not people that are necessarily going to be able to get a job. How many of them are handicapped?
Yeah.
How many of them literally couldn't work in a McDonald's, for instance? A lot of them can't even fucking afford McDonald's these days. That shit got expensive.
Yeah. Yeah, that, which is fucking ridiculous that it got that expensive.
Mm-hmm.
But, all right. So.
Yeah.
Have they learned nothing from France?
They have not. No.
Okay.
No.
No. I just wanted to.
No.
That's the only thing that really came to mind afterwards. Is have they learned nothing from France? Because if memory serves, France has done that on more than one occasion, and
paid the price
on more than one occasion.
They paid the they paid the blood price. Yeah. Yeah. No, they have not. They have not. They've not learned from France. Yeah. So.
Or Britain the first time around.
Yeah. They have not learned those valuable lessons of history. And, they're going to, these are people that think that they'll outlive it because they've bought, like, beach homes with walls and shit. Like,
Yes. Yes, walls.
Yeah.
Walls. Such glorious walls.
Walls that, that as Hamas unfortunately proved, you can take down a wall with a bulldozer.
Mm-hmm.
You can summit a wall with a hang glider.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ways you can dispose of a wall real easy.
Yeah, they're just a block.
Yeah.
And usually they're not, a block of solid rock that's been sitting there for eons. They are, put together.
Yeah, put together, like, concrete rocks. Yeah.
I mean, God. Yeah, it's an authoritarian move that they want to do with this Project 2025 bullshit that, of course, Candace is, like, all about.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I haven't, at least I don't think I've heard her take on it yet, but I'm sure I will. And yeah, before we get into the Candace Show episodes that we're going to talk about this week, I took the time and I downloaded all over 500 because this is what's fucked up, right? Her old YouTube show. It goes from, if you look at it sequentially, it goes from episode like 1 to 241.
Mm-hmm.
Then something happens where it gets renumbered from the top again, like some fucking reboot. Okay. It goes from 1 to, I think, like 80 or 90. I don't remember. I was just downloading and moving them into my hard drive. But then, like, it picks up again at 242. and then goes to like 481 or some shit like that whenever she got fired from the Daily Wire. Here's the thing, though. It's not a full run. That second run is not a full run from 241 to firing.
Okay.
There are several episodes near the end that are not available.
Okay. Probably the reasons why she got fired.
Possibly.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be on sort of a sub-journey to find those missing episodes, to find those missing numbers. I think it's like 6 total.
Okay.
Maybe less. But yeah, anybody who goes looking for her show on YouTube will only find her new show. The Daily Wire got rid of her original Candace Owens podcast show.
Yeah.
So I had to go find all those episodes because I was like, I don't want these fucks to take away all of these. And then, and then, like, if there was something, like, we don't know how lawsuits work. There could very well be a lawsuit for some shit she said, in those episodes.
Yeah.
But I also don't trust Benny Shaps and his legal people to give those willingly to, a lawyer or somebody. Those should be hidden away on a hard drive such as my own.
Yeah. And
I will be uploading them to a Google Drive as well, so there's always backup.
Yeah.
But yeah, so now I have to find those other episodes. I may be able to find them on a torrent.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm kind of hoping somebody archived them on Internet Archive somewhere. I haven't looked yet because I was just desperate to just get what I could.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do have all of those. But now we can get into what I assume the audience really comes here for, which is the oral abuse provided by listening to clips and commentary of the new Candace Show. This week, we are only focusing on 2 episodes of her show, one from the second week and one from the third. There is a tie binding the 2 episodes, and it's September 11th, 2001.
Oh, that's...
Now, Matthew here wasn't born yet when 9/11 occurred, and his older siblings were just little kids at that time. So they've all pretty much grown up in the post-9/11 world. That, of course, is going to be more common moving into the future. As for me, I know where I was when the towers were hit, and it was cooking in a restaurant on Jacksonville Beach in Florida. One of our guys was listening to the news on his earbuds while he was doing prep, and he convinced the manager to turn the kitchen radio over to the news. I was scheduled off soon after the first plane hit, and I was allowed to leave early. Driving home, it was like everything had stopped in a normally bustling area of commerce. People were mostly off the roads or had pulled over and looked like they were listening in their cars or staring at TVs like the ones we had in our bar. I got home and my roommates, who were normally fighting with each other, were glued to the couch in silence. I grabbed a few beers, handed them out, and joined them. Yes, it was the morning. They were in college, and I was a day drinker, so whatever.
Yeah.
Like most of the people we knew, we were watching as the towers came down and the news came in that the Pentagon had been struck. On and on it all went. I don't remember much else in the next few days or weeks, as I had a full-time job in school, but I remember how crazy everything was. It was all unavoidable, and growing up as I had, I barely knew any Muslims. I just knew that my cult upbringing hadn't prepared me to deal with them in any sane way. But I knew the cult was wrong, of course. I did what I could to befriend Muslims and at the very least be an ally, even though their way of life was much different from my own. I would learn a lot as they opened up and shit got crazier in the world around all of us. I don't think Candace has ever had the benefit of an open mind. I say this as I have my phone downloading all of her episodes that are still up from an old Daily Wire show. That was true the other day when I wrote this. Episodes I never listened to but will eventually do, as we plan to cover her journey in madness from the period after her book was published up to the present day. which is the plan after this show has wrapped on the book.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the reasons why I was so driven to just get through get through chapter 2.
Yeah.
Because for one thing, it's a short fucking chapter. I didn't think it really deserved 2 episodes.
Okay.
But also, I want to get through Blackout so that it's on the record. But we can then start going back in time. You know, maybe spend the first hour of the show going back in time to an old Candace show and being like, look at this crazy shit.
Yeah.
And then moving forward.
Okay.
Now, so along with Candace Owens' show, I'll also be pulling anything else along for the ride. I'm doing this because I do on some level enjoy exposing the grift. On another level, though, I enjoy saying no to her bullshit with either my own opinion or, whenever possible, actual evidence that she's wrong. Today, I get to do both. I mentioned 9/11 at the top of this because, for one thing, I rarely think about it much, and aside from the actual yearly time period of it, it almost never comes up in the world. Except with crackpots. And such was the case on Candace episode 9 of her second week and 12 of the third week. I mentioned my thoughts last week that Candace was, is, and may have always been anti-Semitic or at least anti-Jewish. With these 9/11 episodes, it's on full display. I say this because, in her own words, Candace always says vile shit on her show, and she may even, if pressed, say that all of this is entertainment, but I don't believe it is. Because the core element of entertainment or comedy is truth, if it's either. But the kind of person that would find this stuff funny or entertaining is also going to agree with it as either true or mostly true. With that said, this episode of this show is going to contain offensive, untrue, anti-Jewish content. I'm not calling it anti-Semitic anymore. Not in regards to Candace, because Candace has demonstrated in responding to a viewer letter that she knows that cultures outside of Judaism are also Semitic. So, you've all been warned. Let's get this started.
Oh, boy.
Candace starts off episode 9 of her second week back. Let me make sure my volume is all the way up here. There we go. Talking about YouTube or TikTok celebrities and how she finds certain ones distasteful. She'll get into more of that later, and we'll skip over it. For now, though,
it's the conspiracy theory that never seems to go away. 9/11. Yes, the live chat yesterday was lit. They were demanding that we discuss it. You know what? I'm a chronic people pleaser, so let's do it. All that coming up on Candace.
I always forget about her fucking opening. So every time I hear it, it's like, what is this almost occultish, like, chant
Oh,
sound
God, yeah,
I
right.
hear? Like,
Right.
the fuck?
Yeah, that was the end of the cold open on her show and her theme song. Then we get this.
Where were you on 9/11? I mean, if you're a millennial like me, the terrorist attack left an indelible mark upon your childhood. I know exactly where I was. I will never forget it. I was sitting in music class in my middle school, and principal came over the speaker and said, a plane has hit a tower in New York City, and I will never forget what my music teacher said, Mr. Gregory. He said, why are they interrupting class to tell us this? And then some time passed, and they interrupted again over the speakerphone and said a second plane has hit a tower in New York City. And I want to be clear, I'm from Stamford, Connecticut, which means that many of the parents worked in New York City. It's very close, Stamford to New York City. They'd wake up, they'd take the train, and they would go to the city. So then a mass panic ensued. Parents started showing up, picking up students early. I left with one of my friends. And who could forget what happened thereafter? I think all across America we were doing the same thing. We were huddled around televisions, waiting for the news to be updated minute by minute. In my household, we had one of those big, clunky, rather unfashionable big screen TVs, and we just sat there and watched. And I want to be clear, this was the land and the time before smartphones. There were no independent media voices that were offering reports. There was no Twitter. There was no social media on Instagram. And I think now, obviously, we appreciate how significant independent voices are, especially in times of high confusion. I mean, from COVID vaccines to Russia collusion, we now very much understand that the mainstream media is capable of getting it wrong and also capable of telling massive lies. So what immediately followed the September 11th terrorist attack was, as I reflect upon it in the retrospect, now that I'm an adult, a married mother, 35 years old, and my brain is developed, I recognized Soviet tactics of brainwashing that took place thereafter. I mean, every day.
So, yep. 9/11 and all that came after was a Soviet-style brainwashing. News to me. So then Candace goes on to say this.
Place thereafter. I mean, every day. I was an 11-year-old child, 11-year-old, 12-year-old child. We were being told to stand for a moment of silence at 9:11 a.m. So picture little kids, 10, 11, 12, standing up for a moment of silence. And then over the speakerphone, they would tell us to think about and to remember the people that had died. Yeah, we were thinking about death every day at 9:11 a.m. Come on.
Now, she just mentioned how close New York City is to Stanford.
Yeah.
And I've mentioned it before. It's like 35 to 40 miles.
Mm-hmm.
She mentioned how parents went in on the train every day.
Yeah.
Real fucking close.
Mm-hmm.
How many parents worked in New York City? It's likely that many of them, being that close to ground zero, knew people that had died.
Yeah.
The mass trauma must have been incredibly heavy. And looking back on it as a mother with a, quote, fully developed brain, she can only complain about being asked to observe a moment of silence for one of the worst attacks on America in decades, as people she knew mourned the loss of people, places, and their own fucking innocence. Going on from there.
Oh, Christ.
A couple of years later, I entered high school, and my older sister's boyfriend made me watch a documentary. It was called Loose Change. I will never forget it. Never, ever forget it. I came out of watching that documentary, which I think if you looked it up today, it would say conspiracy theories about 9/11. But irrespective of how they want to categorize it, at the very least, you came out of it recognizing that not everything was told to the public about that day. Don't need to go too far.
Yep. Fucking loose change.
Open this up because I want to see if it pops up with what she said it will.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No, cloose is not a word. Loose change.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Film series. Okay. It does say certain conspiracy theories related to September 11th.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to see if that would actually pop up as conspiracy theories.
Oh, you have no idea.
Okay.
You have no idea, but you're about to learn a little bit.
All right.
For those who don't know, the people that listen to Knowledge Fight on a regular just screamed.
Yeah.
Like I did in my car the first time I heard her say loose change.
Okay.
They may have to throw an object. For the rest of you, I'll sum up why.
All right.
Loose Change is a documentary in the sense that the filmmaker had a specific view in mind. Loose Change is a movie made by a truther that really didn't have facts or evidence to support his claims. But since Candace seems to have wanted to believe whatever reality made the most sense to her, apparently this film stuck out. Now, there were several versions of Loose Change that were made. Alex Jones loves to associate himself with the film, but he didn't fucking make it. He was a producer on a version. But because he's mentioned and he's who he is, people assume that he had something to do with the movie. He fucking did not.
He was just...
Yeah. He has a producer credit on one of the many revisions. That's it. And there are several revisions with updated bullshit. The films argue that the collapse of the World Trade Center buildings was due to controlled demolition, rather than the impact of the planes and subsequent fires. They claim that the Pentagon was not hit by American Airlines Flight 77, but by a missile or another aircraft. The phone calls made from United Airlines Flight 93 were fabricated. The U.S. government had prior knowledge of the attacks and allowed them to happen or directly orchestrated them as a false flag operation. Go ahead.
Firstly, if these attacks of planes hadn't have happened, then that would automatically get rid of the one of two options that they either directly were involved in it or knew about it and refused to do anything. Knowing about it and refusing to do anything means that it was not an orchestrated attack by them, which then dismisses all other things.
Yeah.
The other thing is, it's kind of hard to fabricate. Okay, actually, hang on. I think I remember somebody trying to sell me on this before. That somebody placed thermite charges.
Yeah. This is where it is. Yeah.
At the center point of it. And then the planes hitting it is what ignited the thermite charges that actually caused all of the damage, which still means that the plane hitting it caused the issue.
Well, they say thermite. They may also mean Semtex, which is the Israeli military version of C4.
Yeah.
To put it simply, don't come at me, bomb nerds. To put it simply, I'm saying that because of where we're going with this, and I don't like any of it.
See,
controlled demolition is one of the many, many, many fucking things.
Yeah, I don't understand where they get the controlled demolition portion, because you'd have to...
Oh, because jet fuel can't melt steel beams. I swear to God, that's something I've heard thousands of fucking times.
Well, that's...
Never mind that the planes that were... The attackers, they know this. They chose the flights they did because the planes were taking off from Boston.
Yeah.
And they had full fuel, or close to it, when they got near New York. And they did that so that they would have the maximum damage impact.
Yeah.
I don't know if they intended for the towers to come down, but they certainly intended for it to be a big fucking bruise.
Yeah, they definitely intended for a fire to happen.
Yeah.
Which, steel beams... The jet fuel burns extremely fucking hot.
Yeah, it does. Particularly when a fully loaded aircraft hits a goddamn building.
Yeah.
You would have an explosion if a small plane hit a house.
There have been explosions of planes just hitting the ground. Has nobody ever looked at the explosion impact of a fucking fueled plane that has crashed into the ground?
Yeah, you got all kinds of... Look, you were fortunate to have grown up in the era so far post 9/11 that all of that shit had been exhausted for a long fucking time. Just squirreled away to the darker corners of the internet. Places that you, even in your darker corners of the internet brain, have not found. But was front page fucking news, even on Fox, forever. I know this because other people kept playing Fox News around me for a long time.
I just...
Yeah.
Fucking... It's always the thermite charges... Or the controlled C4 at the center of the building, or if you put the explosives in the basement on the low-bearing pillars and then set them off, it'll bring the whole building down. And it's
never mind that they already tried to do that.
Yeah.
Do you know about the bombing of the World Trade Center that happened in the underground garage?
Yeah.
Yeah, they tried to do that. Yeah,
that didn't fucking work.
No, it was very ineffective.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very ineffective. Like, I think it killed a few people because, it's a fucking parking garage under the World Trade Center that's full. But, yeah, it didn't work. Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't do its intended job of taking down the towers.
No, because it was one van.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. I forget that it's one van.
It was one van. They didn't even get, like, a fleet of them. They got one dude.
See, I feel like where they failed there... God, I'm not trying to make this work, but... Okay.
No. I would say that, Bin Laden's plan worked better than projected.
Yeah.
That's a real under promise over deliver situation.
Yeah.
You know.
It was likely, like you said, probably just meant to be a bruise, cause an explosion, cause some fire, but not like actually take down the tower.
Yeah. Well, false flags. You heard her say that.
Yeah.
That's a phrase that the alt-right loves to use as often as possible. Oh yeah, I'm using that. I didn't come up with it, but I'm taking it and I'm using it every time I can.
All right.
Even to describe their own violence at events like J6, because January 6th, for those of you uninformed, I don't think that's anyone in this audience though, because they can't take credit for being terrible. Anyway, the claims made in Loose Change have been widely debunked by journalists, independent researchers, and experts in the fields of engineering and aviation. Critics argue that the film misrepresents evidence, relies on selective quoting, and promotes scientifically unsound theories. For example, the structural collapse of the World Trade Center has been extensively studied, and the consensus among experts is that the buildings collapsed due to the impact of the planes and the resulting fires, not controlled demolition. And then we get this.
But there's no question that we were not told everything about that day and that many questions were not being answered. I mean, some of the things that we were even told make entirely no sense. For example, we were told that the terrorist attacks were executed by the Saudis, remember? Which totally explains why we then decided to go to war with Iraq, who had weapons of mass destruction that were never found. And who can forget how the newscasters told the public that they were definitely sure that it was the Saudis? Don't remember? Let's revisit it. Let's go back to 2001 and watch this clip from our trusted news source, CNN. Take a listen.
Another development on Saturday, New York officials revealed at a news conference here in the city that a hijacker's passport was found blocks from the World Trade Center crash site, if you can believe that. No other details were given, but the discovery prompted the FBI and police to expand the search area down in Lower Manhattan.
I like how even the newscaster says, if you can believe that, because nope, I refuse to believe that, and you should not either. You are telling me that somebody hijacked a plane, got onto the plane, crashed the plane exploded into fire, tower collapsed, they could not even find all of the human remains. But in all of this, in all of the fire, in the collapse of the building, and all the dust, in all the struggle, they found, and didn't give any details of how or who found it, the passport. The little paper passport survived everything. And they go, oh, well, look, this is one of the hijackers. This is one of the Saudi hijackers. He must have dropped his passport from the sky before he flew the plane into the building, and somehow they couldn't even find the audio boxes, the black boxes from the plane, but they have the passport. So here it is. Yeah, nope, not going for that. Then, of course, there are those.
Yeah, so, your thoughts before I continue.
Okay. Now, granted, I'm ignorant beyond this point on this.
Uh-huh.
I'm sure I'm about to not be ignorant on this.
You won't be,
but
yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Go for it.
Explosions such as the one caused tend to make debris go in a widespread fucking area.
Uh-huh.
Even an explosion that is contained can often lead to debris flying way the fuck out.
Quite
that
a
is
distance,
why things like hand grenades are lethal within, I think it's like a
blast radius.
Yeah, a blast radius, and still harmful within an even further blast radius outside of that because shrapnel flies.
Yeah.
Something as light as a passport book.
Mm-hmm.
I could imagine that going flying away.
It's not implausible.
It's not implausible. It's not impossible. Is it very rare? Yes. But it's still debris from a fucking explosion.
I wish it was that simple. It's actually dumber.
God damn it. And also, the black box is not being recovered. I don't know if that part's...
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
But also, the black box is usually stored within the cabin of the plane.
Well,
They
not
are
always. Like for
Not
security reasons, yeah, it's not always clear where they are.
Okay.
Like the authorities know where they should be.
But it's not always clear.
Yeah,
on the thing
it's
where
not always clear. Yeah, like it should be in the cabin because they're recording everything. But a plane is a finite amount of space.
so they can.
That's why sometimes they're like, we haven't recovered the black box yet.
Yeah.
On a crash. Yeah. But yeah, they can. They're a piece of the plane. They can fly miles if
Well, not
under
to
the right
mention-
conditions.
Not to mention that, but also black boxes are not indestructible. You can
No.
destroy a black box.
Yeah.
If an explosion has enough force and can cause enough damage to a building structure to make it, I don't know, collapse.
Yeah. One of the tallest buildings in the world at the time.
And remind me again, the planes hit the towers like what, mid to the highest point?
Yeah. Yeah, between the middle to the top. Yeah.
That's a lot of room for everything to come crashing down.
As it did. Yeah.
On a black box that, while hard to destroy, are not indestructible. Especially
you know why they call them a black box?
because they're a little black box.
No.
Right? No.
No, they're like orange.
Okay.
Yeah, they're like orange, but they're called black because when the flame retardant all burns off, the box looks cooked.
Okay.
That's why they call them black boxes.
Yeah.
Is because that's what they look like after everything's done.
Yeah. So
They're charred to shit.
If
Yeah.
it's in an explosion that caused steel beams to melt
Yeah.
and a lot of concrete to fall,
Yeah.
of course they're not going to recover the fucking black boxes.
Not right away. Not right away, if ever.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they did, but yeah. So let's get into this.
All right.
If Candace, God, I almost called her Condis. Fuck me, I want to call her Condis now because she's a fucking con artist. If Candace, gonna do it right. If Candace bothered to do basic research on the passport story, she would have learned that the passport was found blocks away from the initial crash before the towers came down. It was thought to have been discarded by the hijacker on the way to the airport. A local person found it and gave it to a cop that was nearby. It then made its way through the system and was instrumental in the investigation into everything that happened. It was found and turned in on 9/11 before the events unfolded. The passport bore all the markers of an Al-Qaeda forgery, and being a forgery, it may have been discarded for that reason, as some of the 19 hijackers had U.S. IDs and driver's licenses. Anyway, before we move on, you have any thoughts on that?
Honestly, I could see where they dropped their forged passport and,
Yeah, like in a trash can. It was found in a trash can by a passerby. They found it. They were going to give it. They were giving the passport to a cop.
Okay, so then in that regard, then yeah, of course they found the fucking passport because the planes hadn't been hijacked yet.
Yeah, it wasn't. And like the cop probably was just going to file it away as whatever.
Yeah.
Lost passport. But then everything fucking happens, and now this cop is holding this fucking passport.
Yeah.
That he then gives to the FBI. And the FBI are like, yeah, this has all the hallmarks of an Al-Qaeda forgery.
Yeah, it was honestly probably sitting, in their lockup that they have for that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then, they go, oh, hey, Chief, I found a fucking passport.
Yeah. Should we get someone to look into this? Yeah. Yeah.
And then, of course, FBI shows up and goes, yeah, we found a passport. Because FBI always takes credit for everything.
Yeah, well, they get that, plus all the other evidence that they had.
Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't like the plane hit and then, from the sky, here's the passport. No, it was in a fucking garbage can.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
See, that's far more plausible than what I was thinking.
Yeah, well, I had the same thought you did. When I heard her say that, I was like, well, I mean, it's not impossible. And then I looked into it and I was like, you stupid, stupid person.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on.
Who believe that 9/11 was an inside job, a false flag event, and those people are deemed the craziest because how dare they? How dare they question that narrative? How dare you think that your government could be involved in a false flag attack at all? Well, let me tell you something, sweetheart. You don't have to believe that 9/11 was an inside job, but you better tether yourself to the understanding that false flag events are a reality, not an imagination, not a conspiracy theory. It is a reality. And you want to know how we know that? Well, you can just look this up on Wikipedia if you don't believe me, because a former sitting president who was subsequently assassinated in the back of a car next to his wife, JFK, he refused to sign off on a false flag event. The CIA came to him. This is called Operation Northwoods. You should look this up if you think that I'm making this up. The CIA came to JFK and they said, we have an operation. We want to go to war with Cuba. Okay? And he said, we have some ideas of how we're going to get the American public on our side, how we're going to get public sentiment to shift so that they want war. And what we think we should do is stage a false flag event, pretend that Cuba is attacking America when in reality it's not. It's really us. One idea that they floated was a fabricated shoot down of a U.S. Air Force plane. They also floated blowing up a U.S. ship. And other ideas that they had were just to orchestrate a series of terror attacks on United States citizens. They thought maybe in Miami, maybe in D.C., we'll just start killing people and blaming the Cubans. And JFK said, this is maniacal. I absolutely will not sign off on a false flag event against American citizens in order to get them to agree for us to go to war with Cuba. So yeah, those things do actually happen in the world. And there were plenty of Americans who thought that it was, at the very least, incredibly suspicious during 9/11, shortly thereafter, when this segment ran, also back in 2002, on ABC News as an update to a prior segment that they had done. Take a listen.
So let's just pause here. I actually did look this up, and Candace isn't wrong about this story.
Oh.
This was declassified in 1997. But since nothing came of warring with Cuba after the killing of JFK, I would say that the people involved scrapped the entire plan. My own feelings on the killing of JFK are honestly that Lee Harvey Oswald was a gifted and lucky shot and also fucked in the head. I've always personally had issue with the supposition that there was a vast conspiracy to have JFK killed, because when you consider how many people would have had to have been involved and how hard it can be to get anyone to hold the simplest of secrets, it just unravels quickly. But here, of course, was Candace blaming the CIA for killing a sitting president. Considering how inept they would be at all their other assassination attempts over history, I have always found it hard to believe. But Candace goes on and plays a segment from a news source that she doesn't credit from back around 9/11. It's about a group of Israeli men that were thought to be celebrating the plane striking the towers from the Jersey side. The men were held for 71 days and eventually sent back to Israel when it was determined that they weren't involved in 9/11. This is known as the dancing Israelis theory, and I don't want to spend time on it further. Candace playing the news segment, which is about 3 minutes long, is to set up her audience. Candace goes on to, it could be said rightfully, bemoan how America changed after 9/11, especially if one was traveling via airports. The criticisms are valid, and she gets into how the Patriot Act was passed and how America stepped into what seemed a series of endless wars in the Middle East. Again, valid. But I always wait for the hammer to fall when someone like her says some things pretty much anyone can agree on. It's always a series of logic jabs right before the haymaker. Candace says she's just asking questions, and then we get...
All right, guys, on that note, do you want to know the real reason that most Americans don't want war? It's actually a pretty simple reason. It's because a lot of us are struggling to keep up with everyday bills. Food, gas, and even that power bill. If you own a home, then here's what I want you to do. I want you to call my friends at American Financing.
God
Interest rates have
fucking
dropped
damn
into
it.
5, which is nearly a quarter of the average credit card rate. American Financing is saving their customers an average of $854 a month by tapping into their home's equity and wiping out high-interest credit card debt. And just to be clear, $854 a month is like a $10,000 a year raise. Credit card interest rates are insane. We all see that, and most of us are still carrying a balance from month to month. So call American Financing and take care of it today. And if you call today, you may not have to make next month's mortgage payment. American Financing. Call 800-795-1210. That's 800-795-1210. Or you can simply visit americanfinancing.net/Owens. All right, guys, it's time to get into some stories. We've got some crazy ones.
That's right. It was a setup for an ad.
Okay. I'm sorry, but she just did she really just use 9/11
And the build-up to war.
to sell
AmericanFinance.net. .net. They're not even good enough to be a .com. They couldn't be bothered to be a .com.
Oh my crime and network.
Yeah.
What the fuck? The least she could do is get her fucking facts straight.
Yeah. Yeah.
If that's what she was gonna use it for.
Yeah. But no.
What the fuck?
Yeah, but also no.
Why the fuck?
Yeah.
Oh my Christ. Okay. I see what you meant by she's a terrible, terrible human being, and that's what we'd be getting into.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, there's still so much more show to go.
Oh
Yeah.
my Christ.
Now, I think this was just an opportune moment. But Candace is skilled at weaving her stories into her ads. This is what also makes her whole thing formidable in a way that reminds me of Alex Jones in his prime. She gets the smooth brains in her web and then strikes with the sales pitch, making it make sense at the top and then drilling into it. I don't like saying she's good at anything, but listening to this straight through, I laughed at how effective it all probably is on her key audience. It also has always struck me as funny how all of these conservative dingbats have some sort of financial advertisers, and how many I used to see on Fox News way back. Like, these are supposedly fiscally responsible people, you know?
Mm-hmm.
They shouldn't need services like this on the whole. But my experience living with these types of people was almost always the opposite. Even the wealthy ones were so laughably terrible with money, it was a wonder they didn't wipe themselves out every year. Like, a lot of wealthy people that I ever worked for lived in debt.
Yeah.
You know, like, they just lived in debt almost constantly. Like, it was a wonder I got paid.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that I didn't get an IOU check or some shit.
Yeah.
Like, and, oh, God. Yeah, it's like, and knowing that, like, I roll up to mansions in my, you know, in my day job now, and I always wonder, like, what do these fuckers owe for all this?
Mm-hmm. One of my friends used to live down in Texas.
Yeah.
Worked for a guy that was, like, he was super wealthy, and he owned a bar, but he, like, would barely ever, like, he barely ever had the money to actually pay everyone.
Yeah.
And he would, like, scalp their tips to have the money to pay everyone.
Yeah.
And she worked as DJ at the bar, and she was sitting outside, and she was explaining her, you know, the zombie game that she was running, because
Yeah.
yes, I'm a D&D nerd, and I play in a zombie TTRPG.
And no one is shocked. Go on.
And she was, like, explaining, you know, how things were going and how there had been an EMP set off and all that. And then her fucking boss comes outside and starts, like, spouting off just the ideal audience member for Candace.
Right.
And Sam just sits there and goes, no, that's not how this works. And he goes, well, you know, the Russians, and they got nukes, and they'll strike us. And she went, no, they're more likely to EMP.
Yeah.
Because if they destroy the land they're trying to take over, there's no fucking point.
Or then there's always, like, what, the neutrino bomb or something that just kills people but leaves buildings intact.
Yeah,
whatever. Yeah.
The supposed bomb that they created that could wipe out the entire states with just one hit to the center, and it's like, closest thing you got to that is the Odin weapon system, which, how long has that been sitting up in space for again? Way too fucking long to be useful anymore.
Right. I mean, if it's even a thing.
Yeah.
So, That was all we're going to cover in episode 9. But we've got a whole other ass episode.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
All right.
Moving on to the next episode in our examination, we land on her follow-up to 9/11, episode 12, which is titled, More Shocking Revelations About 9/11.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, well, she starts with this.
All right, guys. So the comment section on last week's episode pertaining to 9/11, it was insane. I'm telling you, like, as the kids are saying these days, it was lit. It was absolutely lit. So I knew that I had to do a follow-up episode because you guys sent me down an entire rabbit hole. I mean, this is probably not even going to be the last episode on it because, seriously, what in the world happened on 9/11? And the topic, by the way, is timely because yesterday it was announced that Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks, will walk free. Now, if you do not know who Julian Assange is, the torment that this man has been through for the crime of telling the truth, then you have got to pay attention. 9/11 is the single most important event of our lifetimes. If we were intentionally lied to about it, then the question is, to what end? Let's talk about it. We're going to be in a lot of trouble after today. Welcome back to Candace.
Yeah, I cut it off there. We don't need to sit through the fucking theme song twice.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Fuck, what did she just say? My brain just deleted it.
She said that they're going to be in trouble, and she talked about Julian Assange for a bit.
Before Julian Assange, something about it was 9/11.
Yeah. That it's not going to be the last time that she covers it, and her comments section, because she reads the comment sections.
Right, that.
Yeah.
If she's going to get, as a 19-year-old, if she's going to try and get, as the current generation, if she's referring to my grouping of it, I might not talk like them, but they don't say lit. They say, man, that shit is fire, or that was some Gucci shit, man. You know, they don't say lit. Lit is not this generation.
She loves that word.
Well,
loves
that's because
that word.
It's her generation's thing to say lit.
What kills me is she's not much younger than me.
Really?
Yeah.
How old is she?
I'm born in 1989, so 9 years. Mm-hmm. 8, 9 years, something like that.
Still, she's using the wrong fucking grammar if she's referring to.
She really shouldn't be.
Generation.
Yeah, no, she really shouldn't be. No.
It's fire. It's not that difficult to.
What I spare you
Christ.
and the audience from.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to cover her bad takes on it.
Okay.
Celebrity shit.
Okay.
Or little kids like rapping.
What?
I swear to God, yeah. I skip over all of that. I cut it out because I don't want to fucking deal with it.
Okay.
But yeah, yeah, and she claimed recently that this little kid rapper, I think he might be 9 years old, according to her. I have not looked into this child because I do not care enough.
Okay.
She claims that this dude, Little RT, is... You're going to look him up now. Okay, she claims that this kid, Little RT, is 9 years old and is illiterate.
All right.
Now, she played a little bit, and not very good audio. She played a little bit of him rapping something, and, yeah, I mean, maybe he has decent flow. I can't tell. Sound like maybe he was going along with the beat. You got him pulled up there? What's the deets?
Okay. So, Little RT is actually 10 years old as of this year. Also known as Mr. 60 Miles.
Okay.
And full name is Lil RT. Lilrt.
Okay. Yeah, Lil. Uh-huh. Like little retweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Let's see. Asked if he was illiterate.
I doubt he is.
I doubt it.
I mean,
oh, that's actually a search. It was
yeah, of course it's a fucking search.
On the
yes,
search, but...
because the internet is filled with racists and homophobes. Yes. There's no. He cannot be a modern child in America and be illiterate at that age. I'm sorry. He might have trouble reading. Maybe he's dyslexic, but I doubt that this 10-year-old child whose parents got him on TikTok is illiterate.
The only... Okay. The only thing that I'm seeing on here for him being illiterate is he's neurodivergent and has a hard time reading.
Okay.
So in other words, and apparently he's thrown a couple fits about it, but also he's 10 years fucking old.
Yeah, he's a kid. Yeah.
And he doesn't write his own stuff from what it seems, but I mean, who
cares?
fucking does?
Yeah. Well, who cares?
Yeah.
That's, like...
So, it's...
Well, look, I think that she goes into that shit for two reasons. One, it gives her a difference of something to talk about, so she's not repeating the same shit that, say, Fox News is.
Yeah.
Also, I think Candace, just like Alex Jones, secretly worships celebrity culture and wishes that it was part of her world.
Okay.
But also, maybe a third thing, if we want to go there, is that if she were to talk about what's in the news, she would have to address things like Trump's many, many fucking convictions.
Yeah.
Or the fact that a judge released a lot of the Epstein files recently.
Oh.
And Trump met Melania in 2005. In 2004, and going back in time, he was pestering Jeffrey Epstein about getting young girls. And there's at least there was one witness who claimed that she was forced into having sex with Trump when she was like 14.
Okay.
Through Epstein.
Oh.
She dropped the case 4 days before the election, something like that. That's what I read anyway. She dropped the case before the election because of death threats she was getting.
Okay.
Yeah. So even her as an adult couldn't quite get away from everything.
Yeah.
If Candace was to discuss what's in the news, she would have to talk about shit like that. Instead, like I said, she talked about Little RT, fucking Cardi B, and all these other celebrities that I really just skip over. But she mentioned Julian Assange.
Okay.
What do you know about Julian Assange?
Honestly, jack shit.
Okay, you're going to learn a little bit about him.
All right.
I don't know what specific kind of thing it is that makes people like Candace think they'll be in trouble, but given the shit she says here and later on, maybe she should have gotten in trouble. But as always, we'll let Candace speak for herself. Candace goes on to talk about the release of Julian Assange from prison, which I won't comment on, as I've found the work of WikiLeaks to have been both good and bad over time. I never looked into the specifics of what was done there, but since Assange is often a beloved figure on the Candace side of politics, I have my reservations about the man. Candace plays a long clip of Julian Assange asserting that the United States never intended to win in Iraq or Afghanistan. It's from 2012. It was always supposed to be an endless war. To which I say, duh, it always was. Even when the USA and the USSR were running the Cold War, we fought proxy battles and conflicts by arming opposite sides. Anyone that ever grew up knowing anyone in the military would tell you the same shit. Anyway, the reason Candace seems to be opening the 9/11 show this way is...
There he is, telling us right to our faces, listen, they want to have never-ending wars, and what they're doing is they are laundering money. So now you probably are understanding where I am getting this idea from, because it's so evident everywhere you look. Ukraine, Israel, Afghanistan, they're constantly telling us that there is some new cause. You guys get to work hard. Your tax dollars, we're going to send them overseas, and then the Pentagon's going to go, whoopsies.
Yep, she's using this to wrap the Ukraine war into how the conservative movement sees the action in Afghanistan and the funding of the Gaza genocide together as one group. Candace goes on later to dead-name Chelsea Manning and discusses several of the stories that WikiLeaks broke, including alleged assaults by Americans on civilians in the Middle East theater. The stories are terrible, and the information WikiLeaks provided was important, but I saw little movement or concern on it among the Republicans I knew in the heyday of the site. People shrugged it off back then, and mainstream Republicans also didn't seem to care about WikiLeaks until the Orange Emperor said he liked them. That was in the 2016 run-up to the election. He said, "I love WikiLeaks."
Yeah.
Because they were going to produce information on Hillary Clinton and stuff, and so naturally he liked them.
Yeah.
But I'd also like to point out that Trump had several years to smooth out the troubles Julian Assange was going through legally, and he did nothing, because even having a name Trump knew well and spoke of highly wasn't enough for him to lift a finger, not even a middle finger, to support Assange. He let the man go to prison, eventually. Like, he holed up in an Argentinian embassy.
Yeah.
And he went crazy in there.
Yeah.
Like, he couldn't leave for anything. Like, and people that visited him over time, his friends that visited him over time, so that he got worse and worse. To explain a little bit, Julian Assange started a site called WikiLeaks. Mm-hmm. He took information from people all over the world about their governments, like generally government insiders sent WikiLeaks information that they couldn't get out to the press.
Yeah.
Well, Assange, I don't remember the specifics on it, but I think Assange wasn't going to name Chelsea Manning, who at the time was an Army private named Bradley Manning.
Okay.
Bradley Manning went to prison, got fully transitioned, came out as Chelsea Manning, and was released.
Okay.
So Chelsea Manning has become a Twitch streamer and all kinds of stuff, very politically active, very cool in interviews.
Okay.
Very, very fucking cool. But yeah, Candace dead named Chelsea Manning. You know the dead name process, right?
No.
It's when, like, well, you've had friends that have transitioned or are in phase of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Dead naming is when someone uses their old name
Okay.
intentionally
Okay.
as an asshole.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, if you know someone that has, like in this case, Chelsea Manning, Candace dead named her as saying Bradley Manning, and that was intentional shit.
Yeah, it's not like in this regard, if you were a friend of
or
before.
it's not making a mistake, it's being an intentional shitbag.
Yeah.
So going back to the hammer analogy, I waited for why Candace was bringing up WikiLeaks at all, considering the subject of this show. She brings it up in defense of how, according to her, people are less educated today.
Or we're too dumb because of big education, sending kids to school to get degrees in gender studies, getting people to focus on the social issues like racism, CRT. These people can't compute. They can't, perform basic or exhibit basic mathematical capacity. These people can't even pass basic literacy exam. Or the last component is we're too brainwashed. We're too scared to say anything if we're not brainwashed. That's how they're doing it. So they have people believing what the media is saying, and other people who know that the media is lying, but they're scared to say anything because, well, look at what they did to Julian Assange. I'll tell you guys in the 9/11 comments section from last week, you guys were dropping all sorts of tidbits, had me at the edge of my seat.
Yep, and then we get into the real meat of this rotten oyster.
And I began researching things I had never even heard of, and I am now completely shaken. So yeah, I showed you guys that video of the Israelis who were celebrating. It turned out that they had connections to the Israeli intelligence apparatus, and the FBI pretty much just let them go for whatever reason. Said, okay, we looked into it, no further follow-up. Then that sort of got memory hold. Memory hold is an expression where they basically never talk about it again, and then we all just forget that it ever happened, and we move on. Well, one of you guys commented and said that I should look into the Israelis that were working at the World Trade Center who were forewarned of the attack. And oh my...
Yep, this is going to get rough.
My God, yes. That is another thing, after I researched, that has been completely memory hold, but it is true. So I'm going to show you guys, by the way, because before they say I'm a conspiracy theorist, I had to make sure that I had all of the relevant documents, all the relevant links, and I'm going to include those links for you guys. So just check out the episode. You can look at the links yourself. Here is the very true story.
So I did check out the links.
Of course.
Before we go on, I want to discuss the links in question.
All right.
Candace links to a Snopes article. Now, do you know about Snopes?
Sounds very familiar.
Okay, Snopes is basically they work hard at debunking internet bullshit.
Okay.
24/7. You can pretty much put any kind of conspiracy theory up and attach Snopes to it and get their article on it.
Okay.
Yeah. So, Candace links to a Snopes article. And by the way, people like Candace do not tend to like Snopes.
Okay.
Because they debunk her bullshit almost constantly.
Yeah.
About some shit she's going to say, and 2 links that don't say what she's talking about. One of them is from 9/12, archived, about how many people were missing the day after the attacks.
Oh.
9/11, then 9/12. From the Jerusalem Post.
All right.
4,000 Jewish people happen to have been missing on 9/12. Keep that day and the incomplete nature of data in mind. Candace goes on first to mention about an instant messaging service called Otigo.
Story of what went down on 9/11. There was an instant messaging service that was called Otigo. Maybe I'm saying it wrong. Otigo, Odigo. It was Israeli owned and operated, and they had headquarters that were based 2 blocks away from the World Trade Center. Now, this is according to Haaretz. I'm sure I'm not saying that right. It's a very popular Israeli publication. Check out this headline from them, published September 26th, 2011. So that is 15 days after the attack.
She doesn't provide
Says,
this link.
Otigo workers were warned of the attacks. That is the headline. And I'm going to read you this piece of the article verbatim. It says, quote, Otigo, the instant messaging service, says that 2 of its workers received messages 2 hours before the Twin Towers attack on September 11th, predicting that the attack would happen.
Thoughts?
Firstly, I thought when you said she goes on about a messaging service called Otigo, I honestly thought that you were meaning like she was about to just pimp out another product.
I can see where you would get that idea.
But secondly, okay, so she doesn't provide the link to
Not that one.
Not to
that one. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my question is, what does, unless it's covered in the next portion, what does the 4,000 missing people have anything to do with the conspiracy of them being warned?
Oh God.
Also,
yeah, we're gonna get down into that because it's all connected in the stupidest of ways.
Okay, so the terrorist group, because I'm blanking on their name at the moment.
Al-Qaeda,
Taliban,
whatever. Yeah.
Whichever one they were at the time.
Yeah. They were Saudis.
Okay, and where's Saudi Arabia again?
The Middle East.
Okay, it is its own.
No, that's not descriptive, but yeah,
it's its own thing
from
separate from Israel.
Yes.
Okay.
Although they are friendly to Israel, somewhat.
All right.
Which makes them terrible, but keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I'm not trying to sound in defense of what they're doing currently.
Yeah.
But what does a Saudi Arabian attack from a terrorist group have anything to do with the Israelis?
Oh, we're gonna get there. It's you can't possibly guess it right now. I can tell, but we're gonna get there. Let me go on.
All right.
Okay. So the actual truth of the matter.
All right.
Is Otigo's involvement in the 9/11 investigation unfolded as follows. 2 hours before the September 11th attacks, 2 Otigo employees working in the company's office near Tel Aviv, Israel, received threatening instant messages. These messages were in English and contained a vague warning about an impending terrorist attack, though they did not specify the World Trade Center or any particular location. The employees did not immediately report these messages to their employer. It was only after hearing news reports about the attacks in the U.S. that they informed Otago's management about the suspicious communications. Upon learning of the messages, Otago took proactive steps to assist in the investigation. The company used its resources to track down the originating IP address of the threatening messages. Otago promptly shared the information they gathered, including the IP address, with Israeli security services. This information was then passed on to the FBI. The FBI launched an investigation into these advance warnings. They sought to identify the sender of the messages and determine if there was any connection to the attacks. While the exact content of the messages wasn't disclosed due to the ongoing investigation, it was reported that they contained a non-specific threat and ended with an anti-Semitic slur. It's worth noting that one of Otago's New York offices was located within a mile of the World Trade Center complex, even though this wasn't specifically mentioned in the warning messages. So to sum up, yes, this happened, but it likely wasn't connected. I'm saying this not just because the evidence doesn't allow for it, but also because, in case no one recalls, the World Trade Center was the site of many prior terror attacks and attempts for years. And anti-Semitic slurs being thrown at a known Israeli-owned company are also nothing new, especially ones that contain vague statements about terrorism. It was probably just another Tuesday for these people. If this company was ever up to anything nefarious, I can't say, but they can't be held responsible for not warning the authorities on 9/11. This shit is absurd. Candace goes on to make unsubstantiated claims that the text messages got very specific about the impending attacks. No, they did not, and the links she provides also don't say that shit.
So, in other words, the threats of attacks were no real different than a brick through the window.
Yeah. And they messaged the employees in Israel.
Okay, so they
with a vague warning about an impending attack, and basically called them Jew bastards or whatever.
Okay, so they warned the people in Israel that there was going to be an impending attack. Did they say an impending attack in America?
No.
So in other words, it was just another Middle Eastern
shit
threat
talk.
back
Yeah, it was just a shit talk.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then
That's what all came of that. It was just a shit talk that happened to have happened within a few hours of the 9/11 attacks.
So in other words, it probably was a threat not even regarding to what was going to happen in America.
No.
It was probably just a threat regarding what was going to happen over in the Middle East.
If anything, if it wasn't just some kid trolling.
Yeah.
Because, that's what people tend to do is especially people like Candace. Oh, this happened, and it was this office in Israel, and it's like, yeah, look, when they realized what fucking happened in America because the rest of the world woke up to it too, that the moment that everything was fucking occurring, they were then like, oh well shit, maybe this has something to do with it. Let's just send it off and find out.
Yeah.
I don't like it, but of course Candace has to weave it into something much larger and dumber.
It's like the same right-wing coworker I mentioned before. Yeah. Okay, so I'd walked up on this conversation of stupidity in which he was going off about, how there was I want to say it was a Ukrainian attack in a Russian nightclub, or maybe it was the opposite. Either way, he said that there was an attack in one of those that was labeled by the media as just some random fucking gang terrorist issue.
Yeah.
And it was more likely assumed to be like a gang hit or something.
Yeah.
Well, my dear right-wing coworker was sitting there going, but it couldn't have been, because if you look at the timestamps and the pictures from the attack, everything was too militaristic to have just been some sort of gang hit, and it was probably the Ukrainian or Russian, because I don't remember which sides he was speaking of.
Yeah.
Of making an attack on a nightclub full of civilians. And the first thought that came to my head was, firstly, bullshit. And secondly, if it was militaristic, who was at the nightclub then? Well,
what kills me about anyone who ever says, this was too well planned to have been gang members. Okay, I want to look at these people and be like, are you aware that a lot of people get into the military, do their 4 years or 8 years or whatever of their enlistment, they get out, not all of them get good jobs. Some of them become gangsters.
Yeah.
With military training. They are very efficient. They are some of the most fearsome people in those gangs, because especially if they have combat experience.
Yeah.
Especially if they went into the military to get that combat experience.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know why people join the military all the time. It's not always patriots.
Yeah.
It's not always Bible thumping patriots. Some of these people do have a nefarious goal in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Or life just leads them down the wrong path after they get out of the service. Maybe they can't find work or whatever the fuck. But they have this skill set.
Yeah.
And where can I use this skill set? Oh, in a fucking violent gang.
Yeah.
It's not unheard of. Especially when you're talking about a country like Russia, where the mafia has a huge presence.
Yeah, which
it's fair to assume that a lot of Russian mafia dudes are former Spetsnaz.
Well, that was the second thought that came to my head was, let's say it was some sort of military style strike. Who was in the nightclub? It was probably a mobster.
Could have been. It could have been a hit. It could have easily been. I think I had heard something about this story, but I stay off of the Ukrainian war stuff as much as I can, because I don't have the time in the day.
Yeah.
But if we're just ballparking here, it could have been any number of reasons. It could have been a false flag.
Yeah.
I hate even using that. I really hate using that, because the worst people use that. It could have even been a false flag in Putin's house.
Yeah.
Who's to say? But yeah, no, I don't buy into the more involved a conspiracy is, the less likely it is to have happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, Candace goes on with a clip I've named 4,000 Israelis.
Oh, there's more. On September 12, 2001, the Jerusalem Post, also based in Jerusalem, reported in a since-archived online publication that, quote, the foreign ministry in Jerusalem has so far received the names of 4,000 Israelis believed to have been in the areas of the World Trade Center and the Pentagon at the time of the attack, end quote. Okay, fine.
Okay, now she basically read the entire quote.
Okay.
That article in that link is 2 paragraphs.
Okay.
It's just an update of 4,000, Israeli-born people are missing right now. Well, yeah, because communications were you couldn't make a phone call into New York from outside.
Yeah.
I had friends that were living there at the time, and they we were all glad that we had the internet, because they were able to check in.
Yeah.
I was part of a website, and this is going to show my nerd cred, and fuck you for the laughter I'm about to receive.
All right.
I was part of a website called Jedi Academy. It was a forum on a very cool platform called EasyBoards. You can consider EasyBoards to be the forerunner of Reddit.
All right.
It was very basic. But yeah, I had found them on there. I was doing fanfic writing with other people, and we came across it, and I was like, oh, motherfucker, this is cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, the people, and half of our mods lived in New York.
Okay.
They lived in NYC.
Yeah.
And it was oh shit, this has happened. We didn't know where all of these people were.
Yeah.
One of them, he worked a few blocks away. He worked in this call center. Mm-hmm. I don't want to give him more details than that, but he worked in this call center. But the office where he would go to get his paycheck was in Building 7 of the World Trade Center.
Yeah.
Now, the main 2 ones came down, but Building 7 was just like, it was a miracle it was still standing.
Mm-hmm.
He couldn't get a paycheck for like 2 months because like they had to relocate the office, like, and so much of the shit in there was evidentiary, like they couldn't touch it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there was a lot of hassle. He had to lean in on friends and church people to pay his fucking bills.
Yeah.
When he eventually could, he took his money that came in one lump sum and he moved to fucking California.
Yeah.
He was like, I am done here. And he moved out to Los Angeles. One of the other mods offered him a guest bedroom in her place.
Yeah.
Because she was like, look, I understand. He's like, I can't look at my job anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, and he was a very like open-minded, very chill dude. And he stayed that way, but he was like, I can't live here anymore. He had PTSD from the whole thing. It was understandable.
Yeah.
You know, especially when you're looking at possible homelessness, everything around you is fucked.
Yeah.
You know, it was going from normal Tuesday afternoon to fallout.
Yeah.
In a second, you know, and he knew people that had died. I mean, he happened to be like a night worker on his on-call job or at his call center job, and yeah, he couldn't see going back into work anymore like than he had to.
Yeah.
You know, he saved his money. Like I said, he got his lump sum payment. He paid off people that he felt he needed to pay off.
Yeah.
When he finally got his paychecks, and most of them were very graceful. They were like, "Dude, you know, we all went through hell. Like, don't worry about it, you know." And he got the first Amtrak fucking series of tickets he could and fucking booked it to California.
Yeah.
He's just done. Yeah. Which he did send me updates. Like we were friends off of the Jedi Academy website too.
Yeah.
And he sent me pictures of his train travel through America.
Huh.
He had grown up in Haiti and had moved to New York City with his family.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a very cool dude. But he had never really seen the country, and that was his chance.
Fair enough.
It was very cool, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, if anything good could come out of that for somebody, I was glad that he was not only alive but able to, you know, leave the hell.
Yeah.
And see the country, see what it was worth, and then get out to California and fucking thrive.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm sure he's one of the, well, I should say few people that I've met that, well, I've not met him, but one of the few people that I've met that, you know, were in New York when everything happened, that now look at life as, man, I could go any fucking day.
Yeah.
I'm not just going to sit around and let life shit on me.
Yeah. You know, I mean, and he said after the fact, like he said about a year or so after the fact, he's like, I don't want to sit here and say that I'm glad any of it happened.
Yeah.
He's like, you know, he's like, shit was terrible immediately afterwards, of course. He's like, but my life up to that point was just, you know, sitting around and typing on a fucking Star Wars forum and going to work every day. He's like, the best thing I had in my life was talking on that forum to people from around the world. But, you know, then I woke up, like it was disaster, and I woke up and I left.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he's like, I don't like thinking that that's what it took, but I needed something.
Yeah.
He's like, I hate that it was that, but it was what it was, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, going on.
Right. And yet, despite this remarkably, and that's according to someone who was traveling with Bibi Netanyahu, only 4 Israeli citizens died that day. So the Foreign Ministry was looking for 4,000 of them, and fortunately, and I do mean that fortunately, because I wish nobody had died that day, only 4 of them actually did die. Here's that clip of Bibi Netanyahu and his wife, and you'll hear somebody off on the side confirming that only 4 Israeli citizens died that day.
This whole section that we see here, we're running all the way down to Paul Cantor Fitzgerald.
So that how many Israelis?
There's 4 Israelis altogether.
Okay, fine. Take from that what you will.
Yeah, I will, actually. There were actually 5 Israelis killed in the World Trade Center attacks, but this was like, you know, pretty soon after it, so I'm not going to totally shit on everybody here, although Netanyahu can go suck Satan's dick. He's the current leader.
Okay.
Yeah, he can go suck Satan's dick. as well as people from 100 other countries. Not them sucking the Satan's dick, but 5 Israelis and then people from 100 other countries.
Yeah.
So the implication is that up to 4,000 people were supposed to be in the area, just stayed home on 9/11. Or at least stayed away from the area because they got a message on an IM app about the attacks. I don't think I need to mention that keeping 4,000 people quiet about this event, particularly what this accusation implies, shows that these people don't know how people actually operate. The claim is unprovable bullshit, and I suspect it's why Candace doesn't provide more recent follow-up material. Moving on to her next claim.
But I'm going to tell you another strange, real, true fact. Larry Silverstein. And this one, oh my gosh, they call you anti-Semitic for knowing it. Larry Silverstein was a prominent New York State real estate developer. He's also a personal friend of Bibi Netanyahu. He is very connected to Israeli politics, Israeli politicians, and other prime ministers. Well, Larry was quite lucky. He obtained the lease for the Twin Towers just 6 weeks prior to 9/11. 6 weeks prior. He obtained the lease, and he also took out an insurance policy, which fortunately included coverage for acts of terrorism. So when it came time to collect, when the towers went down, Silverstein claimed that there were 2 incidences of terror, since 2 buildings were hit by the planes, which allowed him to seek double indemnity. So to be clear, he collected $4.5 billion from insurance on the towers that he had invested in just 6 weeks prior. So not...
Yeah. So, as with all of this, there are elements of truth. The truth is that Silverstein did make the real estate deal for the towers, but not solo. He did it with many other partners. Also, because the towers had suffered terrorist incidents in the past, insurance that included it was practically a requirement. Like, buying a house in Florida usually requires one to be insured against hurricanes.
Yeah.
And that insurance ain't fucking cheap.
No, nor is volcano insurance in Hawaii.
Yeah.
But you get it because...
Reasons, yeah. I don't think his association with Netanyahu really matters. Going on, Candace feeds the fire with this.
11 attacks. Now, I was so shocked looking at that I wanted to debunk that. I turned to Snopes, you guys. I said, Snopes, tell me why this is not true. And of course, Snopes had an article defending Larry Silverstein. And of course, they didn't really debunk it at all. They just write, and I'll include the link to this as well, that the implication of foreknowledge is unfounded, that of course getting insurance is normal. And he wasn't the only investor. He led the consortium of investors 6 weeks prior, but he wasn't the only investor. So nothing to see there. But by the way, Larry was even more lucky than that, unbelievably. Every morning, he used to have breakfast. He used to take breakfast meetings at the World Trade Center. But on the morning of 9/11, and by the way, this is according to Larry in interviews, he just broke his own routine. He, fortunately, on the morning of 9/11, had a dermatologist appointment. So,
yeah. So he had a doctor's appointment. He had a doctor's appointment that he went to on a Tuesday morning. That if it was a Sunday morning, I'd maybe call some bullshit. But again, This is a person with an insane amount of money. Anyone who looks at the trade towers and goes, "Yeah, I could invest in that,"
has a lot of money.
Yeah, they have fuck you money for generations.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't bother looking into how much him and his partners invested in the whole thing because I don't care.
Yeah.
It doesn't fucking matter.
No. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I already mentioned the terrorist insurance because it was the site of terrorist attacks already.
Yeah.
Her problem with him claiming 2 terror attacks because 2 planes hit the 2 towers.
Yeah.
You can't see it right now, but I'm...
Yeah. Yeah. Of course he claimed, you
Yeah.
know, the two attacks because, yeah, 2 separate towers went down. Like, I'm not going to step on that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
It's like if
it's like you know, it's like, sure, okay. In hindsight, not a great investment.
yeah,
But at the time, it seemed like a really solid investment, I'm sure, for him and his partners.
yeah,
And yeah, you know, again, him getting a dermatology appointment, we don't know what that was for. It could have been something serious. Maybe he found a mole that he's like, hey, is this fucking cancer?
yeah.
You know?
Also,
Am I going to go use my fuck you money to go hit my bucket list?
Yeah.
Like, you know, I mean,
not to mention that appointments are made when appointments are available.
yeah.
As-
Even if you have fuck you money, you know, you still go to the doctor.
And they still have to set you up with an appointment.
Yeah. And for all we know, his fuck you money could have been something like, you know, Tuesdays are usually kind of shit around here. I could slice off a Tuesday morning.
Yeah.
That's fine, you know, and then you go.
Yeah.
You go, you do your thing. And yeah, while you're in the office, oh, look at that. Oh, motherfucker, you know? Like,
Yeah.
like
Like, you know, on top of it, it's
I've been saying Tuesday
that?
morning a lot. Can you look up real quick? Did 9/11 happen on a Tuesday morning? I'm pretty sure it
feel
did,
like
but now I feel like I'm questioning myself.
I mean, that's pretty safe to do in this.
Yeah.
9.
Because I feel like if I haven't gotten it right, the audience has been screaming,
9/11.
and I don't want to get it wrong any more than I possibly have.
I need the day. Obviously, it happened on September 11th.
Right.
All right, let me punch in days. Since apparently just putting up 9/11 attack doesn't do the trick.
Here,
Oh
I'll
my Christ! Of course, it was fucking September 11th.
let me see here.
It was. Oh my Christ.
I know how to find out. Let me.
Okay. I put in 9/11 attack date September 11, 2001 is the only result I'm getting. Day.
Okay, so I've gone to the Google.
On a Tuesday, you were right.
Okay, yeah,
Found
yeah,
it.
there it is. I just found it too.
Fucking Christ.
Thank God. I'm not cutting that from the show. Audio
Okay.
Veritas.
All right.
It is what it is. See, when we question ourselves, what do?
We look it
go
up.
look it up. Yeah.
Um,
Even if we're like, fuck, I know this. I should know this. I think I know this. Do I know this? Let me go make sure I know this. Turns out I know it.
yeah.
Now you all do too. We're all better for it. See, that's how you look shit up. Oh my God.
It's called doing your research, even
Yeah.
if it is in the moment.
Yeah.
Okay, but
Yeah.
okay.
Go
So
ahead.
dermatology appointment on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
Completely plausible. Also, you know, okay, because at first I thought she was just going to leave it at he decided to break his habit and not go in for breakfast on a Tuesday morning.
Yeah.
Well, if as somebody who has food option, like only a couple of food options available near my job,
Yeah.
that I go to every single day that I work, and
Right.
hell, even on days that I don't work, I go to them.
Yeah.
I eventually get fucking bored of my selection and decide, you know what? I'm gonna go for a walk in the park instead and get something from the taco shop across the street.
Yeah. Or something.
Yeah.
You know, something where there's, I mean, you work in an area that has some pretty good places all around you.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
if I think I can make it down there in a walk and get it, I'll break my daily routine of going to the place I usually go.
yeah.
Because I get fucking bored of going to the same place.
Yeah.
And I've been there like 7-8 months now.
Yeah.
So, you know, I got tired
It
around
gets a
the
little
sixth-
stale.
Yeah, I got tired around the 6-month portion. Where
Yeah.
I was just like, honestly, nah, nothing's really doing it. Nothing really
Yeah.
looks appetizing.
You know.
So I can understand if she just left it at he decided to break his daily routine. Well, of course, if after 6 months and I have fuck you money to purchase the fucking lease
Yeah.
on the World Trade Center, of course, one of those days I'm gonna go, man,
Well, especially
I really don't want to fucking eat
he
here
was
again."
in New York City.
Which is rich with food.
Yeah. Like, he was in New York City. I'm sure he could, if his limo windows were down, within 3 blocks, he could catch the scent of 14 different cultures.
Yeah.
You know?
There's...
I mean, there's no reason to stick to your daily routine when you have fuck you money.
Yeah.
That's the point of fuck you money.
Yeah, of fuck you money is you can just do what fuck you would like.
Yeah.
And as for the coincidence, it's just that, it's coincidence. It's like there was a fuck, I don't remember the name of the author, but there was an author that was supposed to go on to the Hindenburg.
Yeah.
When it was first taking its first flight before it, spontaneously went.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't think that happened on the first flight of the Hindenburg, but but I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Either way, on the flight in which it went up.
Yeah.
Right? No, it wasn't on its first flight because it was on its America tour.
Okay.
But nonetheless, on the flight that it went up, he had gotten tickets for him and his pregnant wife, who they were like, all right, let's go do this. It'll be a fun date. It's something new we haven't done before. They were also fuck you rich.
Yeah.
Well, his wife fell ill that morning with morning sickness and was like, I don't think I'm going to go. And he was like, okay, we won't go then. We'll just stay in.
Yeah.
Sure as shit, from where they were at, they could see the Hindenburg and they watched it explode. And they were like, well, that's a happy little coincidence now, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm sure that was of him sitting in the dermatology office getting examined and then going, wait, what the fuck's that?
Yeah.
Well, this is a shitty little coincidence, but...
I'm glad I'm not there right now.
Yeah.
Like, even if he had been, like, in a diner on, like, the 3rd floor or something, and even if he had been able to get out.
Yeah.
It's still, like, come on. Yeah, and there are, I'm sure, thousands of coincidental stories about that, or people going, I'm going to have lunch downstairs today. I'm going to have breakfast downstairs today rather than, on floor 78 or whatever.
Yeah.
I feel like having a bagel from the shop.
Yeah.
I want to go get a candy bar. You guys need anything? And then boom, and then fuck, I need to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. Or some of the family stories we heard of, like, people being stuck in rush hour traffic, going to or from and witnessing it happen from the road and going, well, I'm actually happy for rush hour traffic for once.
Yeah, like, rush hour traffic saved my life,
Yeah.
But yeah. Candace then tells people not to be afraid of using this knowledge to be called truthers or conspiracy theorists, or whatever. And then she goes into an ad read for Pure Talk Wireless, which I'll go ahead and mention that company uses AT&T towers to make its service work, which is fine, as I don't personally care for AT&T. Anyway, I wanted to combine these 2 particular episodes because I think Candace's embrace of the Jewish conspiracy about 9/11 stuff tells on her quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Candace is aware of the difference between being anti-Semitic and anti-Jewish. Here's her explaining the difference.
Oh God, she
writes, as an Arab, I was told by a Jewish friend that I no longer have the right to identity as a Semite because it puts in danger the lives of Jews who need this label to protect them. For context, this friend is a wealthy British man, whilst I'm an Iraqi immigrant.
Hold on, I'm going to back this up. This is oh my God, we're going to wind up getting into this. Candace got a message on an app she uses that she's a part of called Minect. I have some things to tell you guys about Minect. But before that, this guy sent Candace a message on Minect, and this is her responding to it. I'm going to go back to the start on this so that we can all hear it from the beginning.
As an Arab, I was told by a Jewish friend that I no longer have the right to identity as a Semite because it puts in danger the lives of Jews who need this label to protect them. For context, this friend is a wealthy British man, whilst I'm an Iraqi immigrant who lost my family home and family members to the American and British armies during the invasion in 2003. It is unclear to me why he needs more protection than me or other Arab Semites that remain back in Iraq and Palestine. Your friend's an idiot. I mean, that's really all I can tell you. He's an absolute idiot. To be Semitic means to speak a Semitic language, and obviously if you're an Arab, you are Semitic. So no one gets to just like take that away from you. That's an absolute nonsense. Obviously, even when you're talking about Semite, you are talking about of Shem in the Bible. Forget the history of it. If you're a descendant of Shem, obviously, if you speak a Semitic language, you are Semitic. You can't just rinse that away because you say, oh, it's no longer expedient for me that you are who you are. That's a nonsense.
So this happened on her 6th episode, that one where she really went after Brigitte Macron, which we covered in episode 9 of our program.
Okay.
So many numbers.
Yeah.
So Candace rounds out the 12th episode with a message from her Minect account. Minect, which I hadn't heard about until I started mainlining Candace's shows, is an app that allows people to connect with dubious celebrities like Candace Owens, various crypto bros, former mafia guys like Sammy the Bull Gravano, and many more terrible humans. It's a huge list. One of my favorites on there that I looked at before tonight was a guy who calls himself, I think it was, fuck me, it started with a C, but let's just call him Dr. Christopher Eng. The good doctor specializes in all kinds of not doctor shit. Like chiropractic treatments and all kinds of like homeopathic shit.
I was about to say voodoo, hoodoo.
Yeah. Woo. Yeah. He specializes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so he doesn't even like practice.
To be fair,
like a voodoo, hoodoo.
To be fair,
he does a voodoo.
To be fair,
all right,
he's very cheap.
All right.
He's very cheap compared to the numbers I'm about to give you.
Oh God. Okay.
So it's a huge list. It actually is. I had to download the app to get a sense of it because they don't tell you on the website exactly who's on there. What they have is they have a leaderboard.
Okay.
They have a fucking leaderboard of people that are supposed to be helping people. They have a competitive leaderboard and a weekly show, apparently. So there was a YouTube link. I didn't bother clicking it. I want to know as little about this as possible, but I fear over time I'm going to learn more than I want, which means so are the rest of you. So, but since we concern ourselves with Candace here, I want to share her rates.
All right.
If you want her to answer a question via text like this man did, it's $100.
Fuck's sake.
If you want a video answer from her, take a guess.
Let's shoot for $750.
No.
Oh.
Only $400.
Jesus Christ.
If you want a consultation with Candace Owens for 15 minutes of her time, it is, I am not kidding, 15 minutes of interactive time with her is, take a guess. Go ahead, just anything. Based on the idea that a text message is $100 and a video text message is $400, how much do you think 15 minutes of her time is worth?
$3K.
No.
$6K?
Not even close. $22,500.
Fuck good. God.
$22,500 for 15 minutes of her time. And if you go over it, it incrementally builds. Up to an hour of her time is $90,000.
What the fuck?
Yeah. Like, that's an extreme level of grift. So anyway, back to the subject of this episode of our show.
Damn.
It's becoming apparent to me that Candace is not anti-Semitic. Oh, hold on. According to the app, she's done 170 consultations, though it isn't clear what form those took. 170 consultations could be anything from 170 text messages to videos, although when you look through her reviews, people put up 50 reviews of her. Out of 170 things, people put up 50 reviews.
All right.
She has done some videos.
All right.
I don't know if she's done any like long-form consulting.
All right.
But at $90,000 an hour, son of a bitch.
Of course, thinking there's probably censorship on it, but I was going to say I'm surprised it hasn't turned into an OnlyFans style platform yet.
Give it time.
Give it time.
Yeah. So, it's becoming apparent to me that Candace is not anti-Semitic. She does seem at this time to be anti-Jewish, and at the very least anti-Israeli. Given the Gaza genocide, I could understand some of that. However, her embrace of conspiracy theories that are disproven and long since debunked leads me to surmise that something deeper is at play here. I am beginning to think that there was more to her firing at the Daily Wire than what we have all been led to believe. So for now, it seems safe to say that the lesson here is that Candace is anti-Israeli and quite possibly anti-Jewish, but not anti-Semitic.
All right. That
and her embrace of Kanye West being very anti-Jewish.
Yay.
Yay. Fuck me. Yes. Yay.
Yay.
It's so easy to slip into. Thank you.
I was going to say Key. I almost said Key. I almost called him Key.
No. Yay. You're right. Yay. Yeah. Her embrace of him, and it's funny too because some of her YouTube videos that I've gone back and watched because I want to say it was in this episode. I didn't play the clip. I didn't feel like it was necessary to the content of this, but she played a clip that I had to go then watch because hearing the audio, you don't quite get it.
Yeah.
She said that she actually does go into the live chat of her shows. Like she records them and then 2 hours later she goes into the live chat to actually talk with people. I'm guessing for free since it's on YouTube.
Yeah.
But she goes into the live chat to talk with people, and she had said at one point that if 12,000 people join this live chat, I will film myself doing a flip. Now, I want to say Candace made an attempt.
All right.
Anyone can look this up on episode 12 if you feel like scrolling through. I am not going to play that. I'm not going to tell you where it is. I had to suffer through it. You can too. Candace has her daughter film her in her yard, and her yard looks huge.
All right.
She has her daughter film her in her yard, and she does what I could best describe as like a somersault. She, goes over on her hands and on her feet. She does land it.
All right.
It's not a flip. I don't know that there's a universe where you call it a flip. It was clumsy.
All right.
But she stuck the landing.
All right.
But it was what you expect a 35-year-old woman who has not done gymnastics to do if told to.
All right.
I'm going to give her that. She's a person of her word when it came to that. And she actually says in the clip, my husband told me, never challenge the internet. You will always lose.
Yeah.
I wish, based on what I've had to listen to otherwise this week, that she had taken that to heart and just never come back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the episode I have to build for next week,
yeah,
it's hilarious and scary. Like this.
Yeah.
Was hilarious that anyone would listen, that anyone would believe this shit. Mm-hmm. To the point that I think she does, because it feeds her anti-Jewish narrative.
Yeah.
Because what she's basically told us here, across 2 of her episodes, when you cut out all the extraneous bullshit, she has told us that she believes that a Jewish instant messaging company got the message that 9/11 was going to happen, and they told a bunch of people, and 4,000 people didn't show up for work.
Yeah. And then okay, correct me if I'm wrong.
And then that it was all a big conspiracy because, let's say jet fuel, steel beams, all that bullshit.
Yeah.
And that, that they just happened to find a terrorist, passport. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But when you take it all separately and you're like, all right, that all sounds like gobbledygook.
Yeah.
But the fact is, if she's telling the truth, she got to those points by way of members of her audience putting it in the comments section that, oh, you need to go look at this, you need to go look at that.
Yeah.
But I think it was more of a confirmation bias for her.
Mm-hmm.
That she has this anti-Jewishness about her that makes her look for things like that.
Yeah.
And I think the Gaza genocide right now, it being unpopular with people for really good reasons, is something that she's been able to kind of like leapfrog off of for her anti-Jewish stance.
I was gonna say it was weird that she's like harping the Israeli aspect of 9/11.
Yeah.
Just
working it hard.
Yeah, working it a little too hard. And did she say that the guy that purchased the lease was Israeli too?
She said he was friends with Netanyahu.
Okay.
I'm not sure if she said that he was Israeli, but
and Netanyahu
is the current president of Israel.
Okay.
And he was a big shot. He's been a big shot for a long fucking time.
Yeah.
So, that, just all of that being part of her contention, and her previous story about how it was so weird that these, Israeli guys got away. It's like, well, they didn't get away.
Yeah.
People that saw them that had reported it said that it looked like they were celebrating the towers coming down from the Jersey side.
Yeah.
And then they wound up, being imprisoned, and a couple of them failed lie detector tests, which we know doesn't mean shit.
Yeah.
And, I think had there been anything there concrete, the FBI would have done something.
Mm-hmm.
Even to be like, these guys aren't, even to say something like, these guys happen to be Israeli, they're not connected to the state of Israel, they were involved in this, we're going to fucking prosecute them, Israel's fine. Even if they went into all of that.
Yeah. But
instead, they were like, yeah, it was just wrong place, wrong time, way wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
We're going to deport them. The moving service that they worked for a moving service. The moving service that they worked for, it's believed was an Israeli front for gathering intelligence.
Yeah.
But that, again, that's not 100% clear. Mm-hmm. So it's not something I wanted to even bring up in the broader context of everything.
Yeah.
It's not, like I said, there's so much of this that I had to sift through that I was like, is that worth talking about? Is this worth talking about? No, a lot of it wasn't worth talking about. But what I presented here was, I think, clear evidence that Candace is anti-Jewish.
Yes.
So.
And like you said, if at least anti-Israel.
Yeah. Yeah, anti-Israel definitely. Anti-Jewish, I believe so.
Yeah.
I believe she's got some anti-Jewish stuff going on with her that goes much further back.
Yeah, which is quite unfortunate because her original, anti-Israel on the whole Gaza genocide thing was actually seemed like kind of a good
it seemed like a good move for her to make.
And unfortunately, she grabbed onto the testicles of that and is currently zip-lining it down the hill. Yeah.
I thought she had a right, thing, and it turns out I may have been very, very wrong. But it's all on record now, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And I'm not going to back down from it. I have no problem with saying, hey, I thought one thing. Turns out with evidence, it may be something very different and very, very not that thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's... It's like, okay. This was something that I did kind of feel a bit bad about, and I corrected myself back at my old fast food job.
Yeah.
When we lived down in Florida. I corrected myself with my coworkers because at the time I was, learning Russian and listening to classic Russian opera.
Yeah.
Because it was intriguing. I liked it. And, then the attack. Well,
the whole Ukraine thing.
Yeah, the whole Ukraine thing happened. Well, at the time, it was just the tension was building and then the dam got struck.
Yeah.
It hadn't escalated into what it became.
Yeah.
So I sat back and I had, looked up some things. I'd listened to some things and I went, guys, it's not... okay, maybe doing it the way that Putin did it, not such a great idea, kind of a little too heavily militaristic, even for my taste.
Yeah.
But what he did was getting fucking supplies to the portion of Russia that had been cut off by Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it seemed like a good thing, and I was actually in defense of it. And then it escalated, and I went, okay, I'm not a part of this no more.
Yeah.
I was here when it was getting resources to the people that were suffering.
Yeah.
And then it escalated much further.
I think it was...
Okay, that's too
I think even at that point, it wasn't him so much... I think that was just part of the propaganda.
Yeah.
That they were putting out, that it was him doing that because the world could have gotten behind that.
Yeah.
People, like, we would have sent aid.
Yeah, I mean, shit,
know.
I was fucking behind that because I was like, that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense if that's what it was, but I don't think it...
Yeah, no.
It's very clear after, 2 years of fucking war.
That it's...
And, oh my God, Candace. Oh,
yeah.
Fuck. Other shit that I have to talk about with Ukraine is in a future episode for sure.
Oh, Christ.
But she is just...
Horrible.
Man, she's trademark horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, God. You know what I didn't look up earlier that I want to look up right now while you do that? And I'm going to tell the audience what you're about to do. Our soda tonight is...
To wash out the horrendous taste of Candace is the Pop Shop bubblegum, a French-Canadian soda.
Yeah.
Apparently made since 1969, and it has cane sugar. It's a fun one. It's got 2 ingredients lists on it, one in English, one in French, and it's got a bunch of double translations, partly French.
She's at 1.93 million subscribers.
Oh, fun.
Here. So, her episode today. Don't look at the screen. Do you know what the title of today's episode on her show was?
I unfortunately already caught a glimpse. The cult is mad at me.
No.
Oh.
You saw what was playing on the video preview.
Okay.
The shocking satanic origins of NASA.
So, in other words, Starfield is a satanistic game, then?
Oh, it gets better. Guess what yesterday's was, because
Christ.
you'll never guess this one either.
What?
Literally Hitler. Why can't we talk about him?
Okay, but this has... fuck's sake. This has, it's actually quite interesting. It's got English and French translations to it. Got it in a nice little pop shop in Stillwater.
Yeah, Stillwater, Minnesota, which is recognized far and wide as the home of Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
We actually went to the Stillwater jail that day.
Yeah, we did.
That was the Stillwater jail. Yeah, and we took the tour. It's very cool. The guy who runs it has been running it for a long time. Very nice dude. But Stillwater. If you haven't been to Stillwater and you live in the Twin Cities area or nearby, go check it out sometime. It's a nice little town. There's some good breweries there. There's a really shitty salsa maker there that I'm going to call out.
Oh, God.
Kurt's Special Recipe Salsa. That shit ain't hot. Their triple hot is garbage. Their salsa is like tomato paste. And I regret that I paid, $9, I think, once.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I've had Midwest mild. I'm not a fan. Medium is sometimes okay. Hot, triple hot. This has to be good.
Yeah.
No, fucking garbage. I'm sorry if you work there. I didn't pass the place because had we passed the place, I would have shot up 2 birds and slow walked it. But, no, that shit sucks. I'm sorry to say that anything here sucks. But Kurt's Special Recipe Salsa, y'all are on notice. Y'all suck. I don't want you to give me my $9 back. I'll absorb that into my head. as a fee I'll never pay again. That said, Lunds & Byerly's, though, ghost pepper salsa, fucking delicious.
That is probably one of the most Jewish resentment statements you've said. That's a resentment level of Jewishness.
You know, it's kind of appropriate that we're Jews and we're doing this show about someone
who's apparently anti-Jewish.
So, the soda here, though, it is a real sugar soda, or real sucre.
Yes, and it
probably said that wrong.
It says underneath all of the ingredients and what the fucking health information that if you're drinking a soda, you're not gonna fucking read.
Yeah, like Oreos should have never removed the trans fats because they're not health food.
Yeah. You don't buy an Oreo because, I want to be healthy today.
No. I would buy Oreos for the express purpose of mainlining a bag of Oreos.
Yeah.
With a big cup of milk, you know?
Yeah. But it says underneath it all, up your nose with a rubber hose.
Yeah, that's an old insult from a long time ago.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it stopped being cool when I was a child.
Yep. Well,
let's find out about this. Does it actually open? Oh, it did.
Ooh,
it's foamy too. Nice.
Oh, yeah, it's got a nice,
nice little ghost there. Yeah. All right, pour it up.
Yeah. Hope you've already gone to the restroom. All right. It is very pink.
It smells accurate, honestly.
Oh. There goes the devil's cut right onto my bed.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, top me off. All right.
Alrighty.
It smells accurate, honestly. It smells like bubblegum.
I won't even lick my hand because...
That's disgusting.
Yeah.
You don't know where that thing's been.
I know where my hand's been.
Do you?
This smells disgustingly like bubblegum.
It really does.
It smells actually like the fucking pop shop candy shop we got it from.
Oh yeah, that place, Blue Sun. Was it Blue Sun?
No, it wasn't Blue Sun.
Wasn't Blue Sun there though?
Yeah, Blue Sun was. That's where we got the
That's right.
WT Heck.
No. I got the WT Heck from the Lunds & Byerly's in Ridgedale.
Okay.
Because I was like, 6 weird bottles of soda. Sure, that'll be good for the show.
Right.
And then I got and a dill pickle was.
So we did go to Blue Sun.
We stopped in there.
Yeah.
Blue Sun, part of Stillwater. Definitely go there if you ever have the chance. But yeah, we got this from the candy shop. You're right.
Yeah.
Let's give it a shot. Accurate.
Yeah.
Accurate. Really good too.
Yeah. Better than Earn Brew. Because that was just...
Fuck you. No,
but I mean on the bubblegum end of
Earn Brew is at the top end of Soda Mountain. Everything else wants to be Earn Brew. Nothing else is Earn Brew.
But I mean like for an actual like bubblegum soda.
Earn Brew is unintentionally a bubblegum soda.
Yeah.
Earn Brew, for those of you out of the loop, Earn Brew is from Scotland. Earn Brew is orange. It looks like orange soda, right? You crack it open, it smells like bubble gum. Even tastes like it a bit. But it has more caffeine than a Mountain Dew.
Yeah.
Earn Brew is the king.
Earn Brew
is actually older than a lot of soda brands.
Yeah.
I think it might be older than Coca-Cola.
Yeah. The only unfortunate thing is the only way to get it, at least in this state, is to special order it.
Yeah. I've had Earn Brew spicy. There's a reason why you haven't had spicy Earn Brew. It's no good.
Okay, I thought you were going to say it's alcoholic.
No, it sucks. Okay. It just sucks.
Okay.
I didn't want to subject anybody else to it.
Fair enough.
It's really good. The Canadians did a good thing there.
Yeah.
I would, you know what? Actually, this would be really good with poutine.
I've never had an authentic Canadian poutine.
You haven't had an authentic Canadian poutine, but you had a poutine when we went to the zoo once with your friend, way back.
Oh, yeah.
And we had a version of a poutine that was very good.
Which, to explain to all of the other 13-year-old minded individuals listening to this.
Poutine is a is a national dish of Canada. It is fries, like French fries, fried up, and topped with cheese curds and gravy. I have seen it done with like there's one place that one of the Iron Chefs went to in Baltimore on a regular basis where they did it in duck fat.
Oh.
They fried the fries in duck fat.
Oh. That's
evil.
Yeah.
And I don't they had some sort of meat base for their gravy.
Okay.
But I've seen recipes for poutine, like very old ones, where they used moose fat.
I just thought of something.
They did moose fat, and then they made like a moose-based gravy. Unfortunately, not moose cheese. I think that would be the way to go.
Yeah.
You get like moose milk.
Make moose cheese.
Yeah, you make moose cheese, which you scrape the curds off of the cheese.
And make moose cheese curds.
Yeah, and then you take, the moose and you make the gravy.
Mm-hmm.
And you have the fries deep fried in moose fat. That's what I would consider to be a true. I would consider that to be the most Canadian thing ever.
And even an even further point, but this would take a little while of setup because you'd need to wait for things to grow.
I think a moose isn't going to take time, but go ahead.
Fair enough, but use your mooses or your meeses as they should fucking be called.
They're just moose, yeah.
They should be called the mooses because you refer to a flock of geese as geese, not gooses. It should be meeses. So, fuck. Yeah.
Anyway,
mooses.
yeah.
I got unnecessarily angry about that one.
Right.
But you take your flock of meeses and you take...
Yeah.
You take their shite, which is going to be left over afterwards.
Yeah.
Because there always is.
Yeah.
And you use that to fertilize the land that you grow your potatoes in.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah. And you're going to need some breadcrumbs to roll your fucking cheese curds in before you deep fry them.
No.
No?
The cheese curds are just on fresh.
Oh.
They melt with the heat of the heat of the gravy and the heat of the fries kind of melts the cheese curds a little bit.
Okay, well then you don't even got to worry about growing the wheat. Just grow the potatoes in the mousse.
Although now that you've said that,
what if?
Yeah, okay. I'm kind of with you on this though.
Okay.
If you deep fry the cheese curds,
Yeah.
then they're chewy and cheesy.
Yeah.
But they're not going to be melty.
And what you want is melty for.
You kind of want them to be a little melty. Yeah, like it's fine if they retain some of their shape, but
you want them a little melty.
Yeah, they're going to be a little bit melty because they're going on hot fries.
All right, so
they're getting sprinkled on hot fries, and then you're doing the gravy on top of them. The gravy ideally is a little warm at least.
Yeah. All right. So to match with the recipe, all you really need to do is have your meese shit. Mm-hmm. Your meese shit.
Yeah.
Fertilizing your potatoes.
Right.
And while your potatoes grow and your meese grow.
And you eat the poutine with the moose steak.
Yeah.
And you wash it down with a nice bottle of that bubblegum soda.
Exactly.
Yeah,
actually,
I think the only other way you get it more Canadian is if you have some Tim Hortons ready to go the next morning.
Yeah.
Some donuts and some Tim Hortons coffee.
Yeah, that's how you make it.
Or flapjacks, Canadian maple syrup, and some Tim Hortons coffee.
Fair enough.
I think that's how you have the most Canadian night into morning. And perhaps a willing and able-bodied Canadian sexual partner between.
Here's the other thing you need. You need to line it up with Canada Day.
Yeah.
So you either...
Or, to appease the French, you line it up with Bastille Day.
Now, why can't you do it twice a year?
You have a point. That's good.
Yeah. Now
good.
here's the other thing. Do you open... I don't know why we're talking about this now, but do you open Canada Day after your most Canadian meal? Or do you end Canada Day with your most Canadian meal and open the next day with...
I would end Canada Day with the most Canadian meal.
Okay.
Spend the night with a willing Canadian.
Yeah.
And then have Canada morning.
Okay.
which is post-Canada Day.
Okay.
See, now you have a life goal.
Exactly.
Welcome.
Thank
I'm
you.
married. I can't do any of this, but you have a life goal now. And we are 8 hours from Canada.
And I know exactly where I can get moose.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, meat from.
Well, anything else about this episode, or are we done here?
Not really, no.
Fair enough. All right, everybody. That was episode 10 of the show. There was a couple other things. A little bit of house cleaning. Every episode from here on, like we're recording this on Wednesday, this is not going to be available to the wide world until late Friday night. But I'm going to go put this up on our Patreon right now. Right after I hit stop and I check everything out, it's going up on our Patreon. Our entire catalog is going to be available on Patreon soon. And whenever we record, it'll probably be Wednesdays, since that seems to work. Those episodes are going to go up on Patreon Wednesday or Thursday. So easily a day or two before the rest of the world gets it. So if you want some of that, you can head on over to patreon.com, join us for as little as $1 a month. And enjoy the show and, scream at Candace. Which I'll remind you all, I do it a lot more. Mm-hmm. The only way you can hit my level is to listen to these episodes at least 3 or 4 times and scream at all of your appropriate moments. But that's up to you. That's it. That's all I got. Maddie, you got anything?
Yes, and you can even hear me scream in this episode. I'm fairly certain at least 2 episodes ago when I made a wisecrack about a sales pitch and then she proceeded to use the exact same fucking words.
Yeah.
Still angry about that one. But
no.
That's
when you said it, I just internally laughed because I was like, he has no idea. No concept. It's gonna happen.
Because I keep myself willfully ignorant of this shit.
Yeah, he does. I have to whisper shit to his mom when I'm sitting there researching it and going out of my mind. And she's like, what's wrong? I'm like, I gotta tell you quietly.
Yeah.
Because he's 20 feet away. Yeah. So it is what it is. But okay. We're going to cut this here. Have a great week, everybody. Bye.
Have a good weekend. Happy Canada Day and 4th of July.
And whatever else. Bye.
Bye.